Sansa Stark's hands trembled against the cool stone balustrade of Maegor's holdfast, but her face, tutored by Septa Mordane, hardened by Cersei's mockeries, remained an immaculate mask. Far below, King's Landing writhed. What had begun as a mutter of discontent had swollen into a roar that rolled off the city's walls like thunder across Blackwater Bay. The bells rang warnings too late, drowning in the sea of voices chanting for bread, for justice, for the head of their golden-haired king. Steel chimed on steel, punctuated by the splintering of wooden stalls and the dull, meaty thuds of truncheons on bone. Flames licked the eaves of a fishmonger's shop near the Street of Flower, and oily smoke smeared the sky. Sansa's stomach clenched with each distant scream. The small folk were supposed to adore their queen-to-be, fair Sansa, smiling in her maiden's cloak of blue and ivory. Yet in the chaos below she heard no worship, only rage. A rasp of metal and a familiar growl at her back. "Girl!" The Hound's hoof-heavy tread sounded far closer than propriety allowed. He loomed in the archway, a monster cut of shadow and scar. His helm nestled beneath one arm, its snarling canine visor as scarred as its master. "Get away from there!" Sansa obeyed before the words fully formed, gliding back into the corridor as if rehearsed. Only when he kicked the door shut did she dare breathe. He smelled of sweat and the forged tang of mail. Ash dusted the dark leather of his surcoat. His eyes, one candle bright, the other half hidden beneath melted flesh, fixed on her with the wary intensity of a hunting cat. She realized then that for all his brutality, Sandor Clegane was afraid. "What is happening?" she whispered. "Riot. Half the city's in it." King decided to ride out and show himself a moment, so naturally they tried to rip him to pieces. The Hound spat. "Your singers never tell that part of the songs, do they? How a starving crowd smells. Piss and onion and blood." Her throat tightened. "Is His Grace safe?" He barked, a laugh with no mirth. "For now. I pulled him out myself. But the mob's not done. They'll swarm the hill before sundown, gods help them." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And they hate Lannister red as much as they hate Lion Gold. You wear both." The words struck like a slap. She touched the red jewels at her throat, Cersei's latest gift, and felt suddenly unclothed. "What can I do?" "Leave." He said it simply, as one might say breathe. Now, while the gold cloaks still hold the gates. Her pulse hammered. "Leave to where?" "North." The single syllable shimmered with impossible promise. The Hound's mouth twisted, unsure whether to scowl or smile. Winterfell, if the gods are kind. Anywhere but here. It was madness. She was betrothed to a king. A daughter of Eddard Stark did not skulk through postern doors like a thief. Yet the thought of the Red Keep, the Queen's sly smiles, Joffrey's cruel eyes, the whispered threat of Ser Boros' white cloak brushing her cheek, iced her marrow. To ride away, to feel honest wind instead of perfumed courtyards. She swallowed. The Queen would never allow it. Sandor's scarred lip curled. "Queen's too busy praying her brat's crown still fits his head. And if she stops us, I'll split her knights from groin to gullet." He offered his hand, gloved in soot-stained leather. "Come." The world shifted. Sansa stared at that hand, huge, brutal, yet waiting, and thought of Septa Mordane's lectures on virtue, of ladies' joyful barks across snowfields, of fathers standing tall upon the steps of Baelor's September moments before the sword fell. "Direwolves do not tremble," she told herself. "Direwolves run." She laid her fingers in his palm. They moved through the belly of the castle by servants' ways known only to kennelmasters and rat-catchers. Sandor led, torchlight gilding the rivets of his greaves. In one corridor they passed a flight of stable boys dragging a Lamed destrier, its flank was chewed ragged by dogs driven mad by noise. Another passage opened onto a courtyard where Ser Meryn was mustering a handful of Lannister guards. Sansa saw the white enamel of Kingsguard plate spattered with gore. Meryn's gaze slid past her without recognition, fixed upon a map someone thrust into his hand. The Hound did not slow. He shepherded her through a postern gate seldom used since Maegor's time, its hinges shrieking protest. Beyond lay the dry moat, a ribbon of packed earth where skeletal weeds clawed the light. No guards. No watchers. Riots drew eyes inward, not outward. Horses waited beneath the leeward wall, two sturdy sand-colored coursers kit in plain harness. Sandor hauled a cloak bundle from a saddlebag, shaking out rough-spun trousers and a faded brown coat hardy. "Put these on. Over your silks." She changed behind a crumbling buttress while the Hound kept watch. The coarse cloth scratched, smelling of horse and smoke, but it masked the pale embroidered lion she'd worn since the hand's tourney. She bound her hair in a servant's kerchief, copper strands escaped, glinting beneath the sun's dying light. Sandor swung into his saddle with the grace of a man born astride. Sansa managed to mount, though her skirts bunched awkwardly. He passed her the reins. "Stay close. We ride through Mudgate. If the mob breaks the line, you ride harder." Her breath fogged with fear though the air was warm. "If they catch us?" "They won't," the Hound said. Yet something flickered in his eyes, the same thing she had glimpsed the night of the Blackwater fires, a memory still unborn. He nudged his courser and set a brisk pace down the hillside. Smoke veiled the city's lower reaches. The wide road to the Mudgate, ordinarily choked with ox carts, lay half-deserted save for corpses and abandoned wagons. Charred fish littered the stones, slick under hoof. Sansa forced herself to look forward. Direwolves run. Spearmen ringed the gatehouse, shields interlocked. Beyond them boiled the riot, men in rags, mothers with babes, smiths still in leather aprons, all howling for bread. Stones flew. One thunked off Sandor's pauldron with an iron clang. He spurred ahead, his voice rolling like a war horn. "Open your eyes, you sons of whores. Sandor Clegane leaves the city." Some guards flinched at the giant astride the dun horse, the snarling helm slung from his pommel. One captain recognized him and shouted for the chain to lift. The portcullis groaned skyward. Sansa kept her gaze low, hands white-knuckled upon the reins. A rotten tomato burst against the captain's shield, purple pulp spattered her skirt. The mob's roar rose, but the Hound was already past the gatehouse, pounding onto the Rose Road beyond. They did not stop until the walls dwindled behind heat-hazed fields. Only then did Sandor wheel his courser and scan the horizon. No riders followed. King's Landing burned alone. Sansa could not hear over the pounding in her skull. She had done it. She had fled. The wind whipped her kerchief loose, and red gold hair streamed behind like a banner surrendered to sky. Tears blurred the world, not of sorrow or fear, but of release so fierce it tasted of iron. She was alive outside those walls. The Hound watched her, saying nothing, and for a moment the scar tissue on his cheek seemed less monstrous. Night found them beneath a stand of willow by the river road. Water murmured through reeds, restless with frogs. Sandor collected driftwood and coaxed a small fire while Sansa washed city grime from her face. The water chilled her skin, yet her pulse remained hot with the day's danger. When she returned, the Hound offered a heel of stale bread and a strip of salt pork. Not king's fare, but it steadied her. He drank rough red wine from a leather jack, wiped his mouth on the back of his hand, and passed it across without comment. The wine burned sweeter than the finest arbor vintage she had sipped under Cersei's gaze. It tasted of choice freely taken. Silence stretched. Crickets chirred, and far away a wolf howled, thin and lonely. Sansa hugged her knees. "Thank you," she said. 2 words she had never spoken to Sandor Clegane, though he had saved her from Joffrey's lashes, guided her through courts of vipers, spared her the queen's poisons, mercies cloaked in threats. He grunted, shifting a branch deeper into flame. Sparks rose like copper stars. "Don't thank me. Not safe yet." "Still," she insisted softly. "I would be dead or worse if not for you." "Dead's not the worst," he muttered, voice slurred by wine and secrets. "I've seen worse." The firelight painted hollows beneath his eyes. He stared at the blaze as though expecting it to leap and devour him. She remembered the rumor. How his brother had pressed his face into a brazier as a boy. She wondered if fire spoke to him in nightmares. She reached for the jack again, emboldened. "Why did you help me?" For a long moment he said nothing. His lips twisted, then untwisted, as if shaping words foreign to his tongue. "Because," he said finally, "you're not like them." "Like whom?" "Lannisters." He spat into the dirt. "Kingslayers. Butchers. They carve you hollow and fill the shell with lies." He raked a hand through his hair. Couldn't watch it anymore. The admission hung between them, vast as the night. Sansa's eyes stung. She realized that somewhere along the twisting corridors of the Red Keep, the Hound had begun to matter, an anchor in a sea of masks. He threatened her with knives, yet guarded her tears from mocking eyes. He was monster and shield both, and she could not untangle one from the other. "I am glad," she said, voice barely a breath, "you watched it all." She offered the wine back. Their fingers brushed, the contact brief yet electric. Sandor grunted again and drained what remained, then rose. "Sleep. We ride at first light." She lay beside the dying embers, the cloak he'd given her wrapped close. She listened to him pacing the perimeter, sword in hand, a wolfhound stalking unseen foes. When dreams came, they were freer than any she had known inside the Red Keep, dreams of pinewood halls and gray-eyed brothers racing through snow, of a burned man standing sentinel at the gates of Winterfell, the flames behind him unable to reach. 3 days' ride south of the Trident, the air grew thick with summer-ripe barley. Small farmsteads dotted rolling hills, their chimneys puffing lazy blue smoke. Here the war felt distant. Banners of stag, wolf, and lion had yet to trample these fields. Sandor guided them along hedgerows, avoiding wagons bound for the capital. At night they camped in copses, sharing simple fare. He taught Sansa to hobble a horse, to strike flint and steel, to cut meat from a rabbit without leaving waste. Her hands blistered, bled, and hardened. Each morning she rose before him, braiding her hair tight and practicing a curtsy only the moon witnessed. She would not abandon grace simply because the court had abandoned her. But she added new drills, the balance of a dagger's weight. Sandor lent her a small dirk once belonging to some knight he'd killed, how to bind a wound, how to listen for the silence that meant wolves stalked near. They spoke seldom of the future. The road itself devoured thought. Yet beneath the hush bloomed something fragile. On the 7th night, thunderheads climbed the sky. They found shelter in a barn abandoned to dust. Rain hammered the roof while lightning stitched the clouds. Sansa drifted to sleep against Sandor's broad shoulder, his cloak draped over both. He did not move away. When dawn peeled the world from mist, she woke still leaning against him. His scarred mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. "You snore like a kitten," he said. She flushed. "I do not." You do." He rose, rolling stiff shoulders. "Better than Joffrey's squeal any day." At the mention of the king, Sansa froze, but the name held less power now. Joffrey's voice was a distant echo swallowed by wind. She stood, straightening her skirts. "Thank you," she murmured again. "Not for rescue, but for last night's warmth." Sandor merely grunted, but a softness lingered in his lone bright eye as he saddled the horses. Yet all roads bear shadows. By the time they neared the village of Sow's Horn, word of the riot and Lord Baelish's purge had spread. Travelers spoke of dwarf-headed rewards, of Eddard Stark's daughter vanished, presumed stolen by enemies of the crown. 10,000 dragons, some said, for her safe return. 100-fold for her head. Lannister gold flowed like poison in the cracks of loyalty. Sandor listened, jaw clenched. That night he stripped the Lannister crimson from his surcoat and burned it. He blackened the silver dogs on his shield with pitch. "No sigils. No names," he told her. "From here on, we're no one." Sansa cut her hair. 2 swift snips with the dirk, and the copper cascade that had once shone at court fell in a heap. She buried the locks beneath loam, tears pricking, yet her heart beat proud. A northern girl's practicality. She bound what remained against her skull and donned a boy's cap. In the cracked mirror of a tavern stable, she almost believed the disguise. They rode at dawn. The Trident glittered in the distance like molten silver. Beyond its far bank lay the riverlands, torn by war, but also the King's Road northward. Home. The goal shone so near that Sansa's chest ached. Perhaps that was why they missed the trap. Near the ford, a cart lay toppled, wheel shattered. 2 villagers knelt beside it, a woman sobbing over spilled grain, a boy waving helplessly at the broken spokes. Sandor slowed, cursing. "Stay alert," he muttered. The woman looked up, eyes red-rimmed. "Good sirs," she pleaded. "Bandits took our mule. Can you help us right the cart?" Sansa's pity stirred. She dismounted, stepping forward, then froze. The woman's hands, sooty with more than grief, lingered too long on something beneath the grain sacks. Steel glinted. "Sandor," she cried, but arrows already sang. One thudded into his gelding's flank, the horse screamed. The hound leapt clear, rolling up with sword drawn. 4 men burst from the tall grass, axes gleaming. The boy dropped his axe, slashing at Sansa with a hook knife. Time slowed. She stumbled back, skirts tangling, the dirk dragging at her belt. Instinct screamed for Sandor, but he was locked with 2 attackers, steel ringing. The woman lunged. Sansa's fingers found the dagger just as the knife kissed her cheek. Pain bloomed. She thrust blindly. The dirk bit flesh, the woman shrieked and fell. Blood warm on her hand, Sansa staggered. The boy advanced, grin gap-toothed. A roar split the air. Sandor barreled past, shield rushing the youth so hard bone cracked. He spun, blocking an axe meant for Sansa. The blade stuck in oak. Sandor's backswing opened the bandit's throat. Red sprayed the cartwheels. The remaining brigands fled, crashing through reeds. Silence, broken only by panting and the whimper of the dying horse. Sansa pressed shaking fingers to her cheek. Blood seeped between them, but shallow a ribbon, not a river. Sandor knelt, swearing softly as he examined the cut. "Fool girl," he rasped. "Lucky they were amateurs." Tears welled, half shame, half shock. She tried to speak, but the words drowned under a sob. The hound's callous thumb brushed away a tear before it fell. Hush now. Wolves don't cry. He cleaned the wound with river water, bound it with linen torn from his sleeve. His hands, always so sure with killing, were gentle as sceptry healers. When he finished, he stood and drove his sword through the neck of the wounded horse, granting swift mercy. They left the cart smoldering in their wake, 2 riders on 1 horse. Now Sansa perched before Sandor, his arm a band of iron around her waist. She felt his heartbeat against her back, steady despite the danger. As the trident glimmered ever closer, she laid her hand atop his where it rested on the reins. He did not pull away. Dusk the next day unfurled over the ford. The water ran swift, swollen by spring melt. Corpses bobbed downstream, armory lorch's handiwork, if rumor held. Yet the far shore beckoned. Sandor stripped the remaining horse of armor to lighten its load, then guided it into the river. Icy current clawed Sansa's calves, soaking boots and trousers. Midstream, the gelding faltered, nostrils flaring. Sandor cursed, urging it on. A log thudded past, spun by whirlpools. Sansa clung to his belt. The bank seemed to retreat with each stride. A snapping crack. The saddle girth failed. She slipped, water gulping her chin. Fingers seized her braid. Sandor hauled her against his chest, lifting her clear. The gelding kicked free and lunged the final yards. They emerged dripping and shivering, but alive. On that northern bank, no longer crown lands, but the riverlands of Edmure Tully, Sansa Stark knelt and pressed her palm to the muddy earth. She imagined she could feel Winterfell in the ground's cool heartbeat. Home was still leagues away, but every step now pointed north. The hound slumped against a willow, water coursing off his burnt cheek. 7 hells, he muttered, remind me never to play ferryman again. Sansa laughed, truly laughed, for the first time since her father's arrest. The sound startled them both. Rainwater glimmered on her lashes like jewels. We made it, she said, voice trembling with joy. We made it. Sandor studied her, eyes flicking from the cut on her cheek to the smile upon her lips. Slowly, awkwardly, he nodded. Aye, little bird. He pushed wet hair from his brow. We did. They skirted ravaged villages, keeping to forest tracks where Lannister patrols dared not ride. News of Robb Stark's victories at Oxcross spread on the tongues of refugees. Whenever folk asked their names, Sandor called himself Ser Brune and presented Sansa as his squire. None questioned, her short hair and mud-smeared face hid the high-born angles that once graced songs. One night they reached an inspired by fire, the Willow Whisper, its sign carved with a dancing nymph. Sandor paid in silver stag coins, careful to show no lions. Sansa ate onion broth and crusty bread at a corner table while men spoke of the young wolf marching ever south, of Tywin's host shadowing him, of Stannis Baratheon's siege of Storm's End. The world spun on the edge of sore points, and she rode a sliver of hope between empires. When she climbed the narrow stairs to her garret room, she found the hound waiting in the corridor, torch in hand. Shadows danced across his scar. Room's safe. I checked windows. You needn't. I need. He hesitated. Bandage needs changing. Inside, by candle glow, he cleaned the cut again. His breath smelled of ale, but his hands were sure. The wound it well, he said. No fever. She touched his wrist, and he stilled, pulse thrumming beneath scarred skin. Sandor, she whispered. The name felt daring without the title. Will you stay? Just until I fall asleep. His shoulders stiffened. Firelight flickered in the deep well of his good eye. He set the cloth aside. Not wise. Please. A war raged across his face, but at length he lowered himself to the floor beside the narrow bed, back against the wall, sword across his knees. Sleep, then he murmured. She lay down, exhaustion crawling through bone. Yet slumber held back as if fate waited for her to claim one promise more. She reached over the mattress edge, seeking his hand. After a breathless pause, rough fingers closed around hers. Calloused and warm, they anchored her to the waking world until dreams at last claimed her, dreams of dire wolves and hounds running side by side beneath a sky bright with northern stars. Morning shattered with distant hoofbeats. Sa! Ndor jerked awake, sword half-drawn. Sansa blinked blearily, sheets tangled. Outside, men shouted orders. The innkeeper's wife screamed. Sandor flung the door wide, catching an urchin racing past. Who rides? Bloody Emma mountain men, sir. Painted dogs on their shields. The boy sniffled. They demand silver and food. Sandor's face hardened. Painted dogs Clegane men. Loyal, most, to House Lannister. He slammed the door, mind racing. We leave. Now. No time for breakfast. They escaped through the stable's rear as 10 riders stormed the yard, mail glinting. Sandor tossed Sansa onto a stolen palfrey and vaulted behind her. They burst onto the back lane, hooves slipping on dewy grass. Arrows whistled, one shattering a trough beside them. A snarled command echoed, "Take them alive." Sandor drove heels, but the palfrey tired from overuse. Sansa risked a glance. 6 riders gave chase, hound-headed sigils flapping. The hound cursed in a tongue she did not know and veered toward the tree lean where brush might slow pursuit. The world blurred, branches whipping, breath ragged. Then a cliff's edge loomed, overlooking a river gorge. Water thundered 40 feet below, churning among granite teeth. Sandor reined hard. Dead end. He turned. The riders fanned out, cutting escape. Their captain, a bearded brute in Clegane gold, grinned beneath a rust-flecked nasal bar. "Sir Sandor," he called, "the imp offers a lord's ransom for the Starkwhelp. Hand her over and come home." Sandor's sword rasped free, slender as death. "I've no home but the road." The captain spat. "Then die on it." He signaled. 3 riders advanced, maces ready. Sansa's lungs constricted. She clasped Sandor's elbow. "They want me." "You could Quiet." He did not look back. "Stay behind me." Time cracked. The first rider charged. Sandor met him head-on, parrying the mace, sliding his blade beneath the rider's gorget. Blood sprayed. He yanked the corpse from the saddle and swung up onto the warhorse in one fluid motion, leaving Sansa on the trembling palfrey. "Mount up," he roared. She obeyed before thought, leaping astride the dead man's horse. It reeked of old sweat and fear. Steel clashed. Sandor wheeled to intercept 2 riders flanking. One he unhorsed with a shield bash, the other caught his blade full in the chest. The captain cursed, drawing a crossbow. Sandor's mount reared, hooves battering another foe's breastplate. An arrow nicked the hound's calf, but he fought on, fury incarnate. Sansa felt the gorge wind behind, tasted spray. The cliff whispered promises, leap and live, or stay and see him fall. The captain aimed again, this time at Sandor's exposed back. "No," she screamed. Everything froze, her terror, the beating of her heart, then ignited. She kicked her horse forward, scooping the fallen rider's dropped axe as she passed. The weight nearly tore her arm from socket. She raised it awkwardly, but the captain turned at the shout, startled. The axe's blunt haft struck his bowstring a breath before he loosed. The bolt veered high. Sandor's sword found the opening beneath the captain's pauldron, punching clean through shoulder and lung. The man toppled, screaming bubbles. The last 2 riders fled. Silence fled only when Sandor pulled rein beside her. He stared at the axe drooping from her hand. "Brave," he said, voice raw. "And stupid." She sagged, tremors claiming limbs. Tears blurred vision. Sandor dismounted stiffly, wound seeping through his boot. He steadied her in his arms, the axe clattering away. "You're hurt," she gasped. "Later." He pressed forehead to hers, breath hot. "You saved me." She shook her head. "You saved me first." He laughed, hoarse, and kissed her, swift, fierce, tasting of blood and rain. The world spun. When the moment broke, he stepped back, armor clinking, eyes burning with something more than fire. "Come, little bird," he said softly. "North waits." And so they rode, one limping, one bandaged, but unbroken, into lands where the Trident's tributaries wove between blackened fields. Wolves howled in the dusk, and ravens circled above columns of smoke. Yet somewhere beyond ruin lay Moat Cailin, White Harbor's salty air, and Winterfell's gray towers standing proud against the coming winter. On nights when nightmares prowled, Sandor kept watch until dawn's pale gold bled across the east. On days when despair threatened, Sansa hummed half-forgotten northern lullabies, her clear voice threading courage into the marrow of their bones. Step by step, they forged a road no song had written. A road where a burned man might find absolution and a wolf maiden might grasp the steel of her own fate. The road stretched long, and war marched beside them, but together they would carve a path through shadow and flame until the white mists of the neck welcomed them, until home rose above the pines, red leaves whispering of the old god's vigil. Their story, blood-marked, starlit, had only just begun. The morning wind carried the scent of char to the ravaged clearing where their battle with Clegane riders had ended. Ash coated the grass in brittle streaks, and crows eyed the carnage from alder branches overhead, croaking impatient admonitions that the living should move along. Sandor Clegane swore under his breath as he tightened the makeshift poultice round his calf. The cloth was soaked through with a watery pink that betrayed how badly the arrow had bit. Sansa gathered what little remained in her saddlebags while keeping one worried eye on him. His face had paled beneath burn scar tissue, sweat shining across the raw ridges. Yet when she knelt to help, he waved her off with a growl. Knives and fools, he muttered. Bandits know how to poison tips nowadays. If fever comes, ride north without me. I will do no such thing, she answered, surprising herself with how steady her voice had become. For moons ago she would have begged a passing maester, or worse, prayed for Lannister knights. Now she crouched beside a giant of a man and rummaged for clean linen as though tending wounded warriors were daily work. Sandor noticed the calm in her movements. A hint of grim regard glimmered in the unscarred half of his face. Stark steel in your spine, girl. He tried to rise but faltered when weight met the leg. She slipped under his arm before he toppled, bearing up more of his mass than ought to fit across her small shoulders. Together they limped to the shade of a leaning cottonwood where the ground felt cool and forgiving. She fetched river water in a dented helm and coaxed him to drink, then dripped some onto a rag scented with crushed mint leaves she had gathered the day before. The mint eased the reek of pus as she peeled away the bandage. Sandor's jaw clenched, but he did not cry out. A sliver of black wood, thin as a needle, jutted from the angry wound. Sansa's stomach lurched, yet her fingers stayed steady. "Hold the branch," she whispered. He braced both hands around the trunk. She took the dirk, slid its edge beneath the splinter, and worked it free while blood welled hot. Sandor exhaled a breath that rattled like a forge bellows. When the fragment lay in her palm, wicked and barbed, she rinsed the gash with wine and laid fresh linen steeped in mint. "Maester Luwin mixed honey and gold thorn for cuts," she murmured, thinking aloud. "I have neither, but mint wards rot. There's rot enough in me already," he rasped, but his voice held grudging approval. They did not leave the grove until shadows shortened and the crows grew bored. Sandor could no longer mount alone, so Sansa coaxed the warhorse to kneel by offering the last of their oats, then pulled and pushed until he straddled the saddle. She climbed behind, clasping him round the waist. His bulk felt molten, fever rising despite the cool breeze. All that day she rode with her ear against his back, listening to his breathing. When dusk bled purple across the horizon, she felt the rhythm falter, catching in choked rasps. She pushed aside panic and scanned the road until she spied a plume of hearth smoke curling beyond a stand of elder trees. It was a hamlet scarcely fit for the name, 3 thatch-roof cottages and a collapsed windmill. Yet in its center rose a weather-grade sept torn by war but still standing. She guided the horse to its low porch. A cracked sigil of the 7 hung above the door. A lantern flickered inside. A bent old septon answered her knock, hair snowy and thin save for a bald crown. His eyes, milk blue with cataracts, widened at sight of Sandor's hound snarl helm but softened when they fell on Sansa. "Child of the North," he wheezed as though reading her heart plainly. "The mother hears your need. Bring him in." With the septon's help and 2 broad-shouldered farm girls, they eased the hound onto a straw pallet laid beside the altar. Sansa knelt as the old man opened a battered coffer of herbs and glass vials. He ground dried marigold, wormwood, and a pinch of warm violet dust she did not recognize, then infused it in wine. Sandor swallowed the draught with a grunt, sweat beading his brow. Night deepened. Candlelight trembled on cracked religious frescoes, the warrior with sword raised, the mother cradling an infant. Outside, thunder rumbled and rain began to drum on the leaded panes. Within, the septon hummed soft hymns while Sansa sponged Sandor's face. Fever racked him, eh? He muttered of fire, of Gregor's laughter, of a little bird fluttering in a burning cage. She clasped his hand until the tremor slowed. Before dawn the fever broke. Dew-chill air crept through broken shutters and Sandor's sleep eased into something near peace. The septon nodded, satisfied. "He will live," he whispered. The stranger cast dice and the mother turned them. Sansa's relief left her trembling. She bent over the hound's slumbering form, brushing a stray lock of dark hair from his brow. His eyelids fluttered, then stilled. She realized the septon watched her with a smile gentle as winter sunlight. "Your road is long, child," he said, "but the gods send signs. A direwolf is loyal beyond death, they say, and a hound never forgets his bond." She bowed her head, not trusting her throat to manage words. They remained 2 days while the rain churned the road into black pudding. Sandor ate broth, cursed the taste, and healed. The farm girls brought rough bread. Sansa repaid by mending their torn shawls with a needle the septon loaned her. She sang softly as she worked, old Winterfell songs of rowan berries and the quiet hush of falling snow. The girls listened wide-eyed, never having heard a highborn lady's voice outside a lord's hall. On the third dawn, gray and lambent, the Septon blessed them with a smear of holy oil. Sandor pressed a silver stag into his palm. Then, at the old man's insistence, took a stoppered vial of the violet dust. "King's foil from the reach," the Septon said. "Crush it in hot wine if fever returns." When they rode out, the farm girls waved until mist swallowed the hamlet. Sansa cast a glance back and saw the Septon standing beneath the Sept's arch, cane raised in farewell. For the first time since King's Landing, she felt something like the warmth of family. Summer war spread its wounds across the riverlands. Villages lay scorched, their wells fouled, orchards hacked down for spite. Blackened beams jutted like ribs from the earth. Column after column of broken folk shuffled along the verges, clutching bundles of rags and children too listless to cry. Some eyed Sandor's sword warily, others begged coin Sansa could not spare. She offered small courtesies, half a loaf, a swallow of water. Grief had sculpted her into a creature of quiet mercy. They kept off the King's Road, riding goat tracks through tangled woods where the shadows soaked up sound. Yet rumor trod even the most forsaken deer paths. They learned that Lord Tywin marched east with 20,000, that Robb Stark had vanquished Stafford Lannister at Oxcross, that Renly Baratheon lay in his pavilion slain by sorcery. Each fragment bent the world anew. One afternoon, as sunbeams lanced the canopy, hoofbeats echoed behind them, light and nimble, more prance than pursuit. Sandor nudged the warhorse into a trot, scanning the underbrush, hand at weapon. 5 riders emerged in brown cloaks mottled green. Archers astride rangy palfreys. Their leader raised a gloved hand. "Well met on the forest road," he called, voice lilting. "Stand easy, we've no love for lions this day." Golden hair curled beneath the rim of his wool hood, and a lute was slung across his back. The sight of the instrument set Sandor's teeth on edge. "Bards in armor? Must be the Bloody Brotherhood." The singer laughed. "Tom of Seven Streams, these 36 years at your service. And you, brave travelers?" "Just 2 weary souls," Sansa said before Sandor could bite. She pitched her voice lower, praying her cropped hair and rough-spun tunic masked her sex. "We seek safe passage north." Tom's hazel eyes twinkled. "North is a hard road, lad. Wolves prowl the neck and worse. But we can spare hot stew and a fire while daylight lasts." Sandor leaned close. "We ride on," he growled, but Sansa felt the tremor in his thigh where fever still lingered. The Brotherhood men carried bows strung and ready. Flight could turn swiftly. She touched Sandor's arm, and he stilled. Tom led them to a glade where a cook fire smoked beneath apple trees. A half-dozen others lounged on logs. A spearwoman with raven braids, a silent archer wrapped in a yellow cloak, a laughing lad no older than Bran polishing throwing knives. At their center squatted a stocky priest in red and tattered gold, flame-colored beard bristling round a lantern jaw. One eye socket was an empty cavern. The other gleamed with stern welcome. "Thuras of Myr," Sansa breathed before she could swallow the name. When last she'd seen him, he rode with King Robert's tourney retinue, bearded and blustering, torch alight in hand. "Ho!" Thuras boomed. "Fresh faces. Come, share the soup, though it's more bone than broth these days." Sandor dismounted stiffly. The moment his boots hit earth, the yellow-cloaked archer stilled, gaze sharpening. "You," he whispered. "Burn, Hound." He lifted his bow a hair. Sansa's heart skipped. But Tom's hand clamped gently on the archer's arm. "Easy, Angui. A man can change cloaks." Sandor showed empty palms. "No lion colors on me now." Yet his stance coiled. "Ready." Thuras regarded him inscrutably, then cracked a grin. "If the stranger sends even Clegane to us, mayhap he's not all gloom." He ladled stew into a wooden bowl and thrust it at the Hound. "Eat, sir. Feed the wolf pup too." Sansa accepted a bowl with a nod. The stew's steam carried hints of onion, carrot tops, and wild boar. She forced herself to sip slowly, watching the Brotherhood. They spoke in low murmurs of raids on Lannister foragers, rescues of small folk bound for Harrenhal labor camps, the Red Priest's uncanny ability to spark fire on damp kindling. Between tales, Tom plucked lazy chords on his lute, filling the air with a ballad of Gendry, the bull forging swords in moonlight. When bowls lay empty, Thuras gestured to Sandor's bandaged calf. "Arrow did more than graze, I wager. Let me cleanse it." Sandor hesitated, pride warring with pain, but the priest knelt and unwrapped the linen. He sniffed the wound, muttered a Myrish curse, and poured white-hot wine across the flesh. Sandor flinched but did not cry out. Thuras dusted the cut with green powder that hissed where it touched blood. "Rare good," he said. "Kingswood wormseed. Will draw poison like milk." He bound the leg anew with fresh cloth. Only then did Sandor offer a gruff thanks. Night approached. Tom broke out a skin of peach brandy. Songs followed, soft at first, then rollicking. Sansa's guard slipped as music carried her across the miles back to a winter town hearth where old Nan had sung while snow tapped the shutters. She closed her eyes and hummed along. When she opened them, Tom watched her curiously. "Voice sweet as high harp," he said. "Not often I hear such northwind timbre on these roads." His gaze flicked to her cap and back. He knew. She felt it. Panic fluttered, but Tom only inclined his head as though vowing secrecy. Later, while the others doused embers, Angui leaned close to Sandor. "Keep her safe, dog." The whisper carried chill steel. "If she bleeds for Lannisters again, I'll notch an arrow for your heart." Sandor's answer was softer still. "You'll need two." At dawn they parted without coin changing hands. Tom waved from horseback, lute slung. Thuras raised a jug in salute. As the Brotherhood melted into the trees, Sandor said, "Could have been worse. Could have been Lord Barrack himself." Sansa mounted, puzzled. "Why would that?" "He's died 6 times and rises still," Sandor muttered. "Hard to kill a man the Lord of Light favors." They pressed on. Bridges sprawled broken across the Green Fork, their stone piers blasted by Lannister sappers to slow Robb Stark's advance. Ferries overcrowded with refugees lay dashed against reefs downstream. Sandor found a ford patrolled by Frye soldiers in ill-fitting mail. Their sergeant eyed the warhorse hungrily and demanded a gold dragon for passage. "We've silver, not gold," Sandor said. The sergeant spat. "Then back south." Lightning quick, Sandor's blade kissed the man's throat, drawing a thread of red. "Gold enough in your blood," he rumbled. Shocked silence followed. Sansa's pulse thundered. The sergeant swallowed. "Fine, fine. Silver then." They crossed while Frye spearmen looked anywhere but at Sandor's half-smile. On the far bank, Sansa exhaled a breath she hadn't known she held. "You risked them raising the alarm." Frye alarm travels slower than a crippled goat, he scoffed, but she saw tension ease from his shoulders. Beyond the twins, the land changed. Forest gave way to peat bogs patched with blown grass, cattails nodding in groves of black alder. Midges swarmed at dusk, and the air smelled of decay sweet as rotted apples. Here began the neck. Crannogman country, her father had said. Secretive folk who walked on water shoes and knew every twisting channel. On the 5th night of Marsh Slog, they camped atop a mossy barrow mound to avoid snakes. Pale mist curled from the fin, muffling sound. Sandor cleaned his wound, the green powder had drawn the last pus, and flexed the leg with a grunt of satisfaction. Sansa finished weaving a length of marshgrass twine to mend their reins. As she tied the final knot, she felt Sandor's gaze. Firelight painted half his face in molten gold, the scars softening in the glow. "You grow into wolfskin," he said. "Quick hands, sharp eyes." She flushed, uncertain whether to deflect with courtesy or accept the praise. She chose honesty. "You taught me." He snorted. "I taught you?" "I taught you to stab clumsy bandits and damn near drown crossing rivers." "You taught me to live." The words fell like stones in still water. Ripples spread between them, breaking the hush of mist. Sandor stared, then looked away, uncomfortable in kindness. "World's strange," he muttered. "If I'm your teacher, gods help you." That night Sansa dreamed of dire wolves loping under storm clouds, their howls braiding with a deep hound's bay. One wolf's fur shone silver gold as though moonlight had melted into dawn. She woke shivering despite the mild air and found Sandor already up, scanning fog with sword drawn. "Tracks," he whispered. "Light feet, no horses. We move." Within an hour they learned who trailed them. A spear whistled past, thumping into a tamarack trunk. From the reeds rose half-seen figures, slender, reed-wave. In armor, faces streaked green and black. Crannogmen. They carried frog spears and short bows strung with sinew. A woman stepped forward, her cloak woven of rushes that blended into mist. "Steel dogs not welcome," she said, accent lilted like swamp birds. Her arrow angled directly at Sandor's heart. Sansa threw back her hood. "I am Sansa Stark of Winterfell," she called, voice ringing across the fort. "We seek safe passage north to my brother Robb." Murmurs rippled. The woman lowered her bow, studying Sansa's short hair, the scar on her cheek. "Daughter of Eddard Stark?" "I am." The Crannog woman glanced at Sandor. "Why ride with Lannister's hound?" "He saved me from lions," Sansa said. He fights now for no one but himself and for me. Silence. Finally, the woman nodded to two youths who melted back into reeds. Word will be sent to Lord Howland. Until he replies, you come blind. She produced woven rush hoods and tied them over their eyes. Sandor bristled but endured. Guided by soft hands on their elbows, they waded knee-deep channels, stepped across floating mats that shifted underfoot, ducked beneath willow boughs fragrant with rot. Sansa half expected to stumble, but the unseen ground felt sure, as though the neck itself accepted her return. After what might have been hours, they halted. The hoods came off. They stood upon a low island of rush rock lit by driftwood torches. A ring of crannogmen encircled a fire pit where a tall man waited, barefoot, gray-bearded, moss-cloak clasped with bone. His eyes were deep as tarn water and kind in a way that made Sansa's heart twist. Howland Reed, Sandor murmured, half to himself. The Lord of Greywater watched them silently, then bowed to Sansa as one might to a queen. My lady, he said, voice gentle. Your father was my friend and still hearthguest in all my halls. I would give you welcome, yet the wars have toppled even the steadiest hearthstones. Tears stung Sansa's eyes. Thank you, my lord. We ask only for guidance through the swamps. My brother rides south, I must go north to Winterfell. Lord Howland studied Sandor. And the Hound? Bound to her by blood and choice, Sandor answered gruffly. No love for lions left in me. Reed's gaze lingered on the scars, the warhorse's ragged barding. After a heartbeat, he nodded. Then eat, rest, and at dawn we'll set you on the hidden causeway that leads to Moat Cailin. But know this, the Dreadfort's banners fly there now. Bolton men barring the north. Bolton, the flayed man. Sansa felt cold sluice through her veins. Roose Bolton is my brother's bannerman, she said, though her voice lacked certainty. Reed sighed, but his son commands the moat, and Ramsay Snow's loyalty is flint-sharp only when struck by fear. Take care. That night, crannogwomen laid rush mats and fed them eel cooked in willow bark. Sansa shared dreams with Jojen's sister Mira in a corner near the fire. The girl spoke of Bran. Somehow alive beyond the wall, chasing children of the forest through haunted groves. Tears slipped down Sansa's cheeks at the thought of her little brother wandering frozen wastes. Mira clasped her hand, hope in her smile. Sandor kept apart, sharpening his sword until sparks danced. Yet when Sansa retired to the reed hut offered to her, she found him leaning against the doorway. He glanced inside at the pallets of moss, at the woven walls thin as paper. It won't keep rain, he grumbled. She touched his arm. I will be safe. Rest, Sandor. His brow creased. Dream of wolves, little bird. I dream of hounds too, she whispered and left him standing under starlight. Dawn found them atop tall swamp ponies supplied by the crannogmen. Hoofbeats made little sound on the turf causeway that snaked through glassy water dotted with white lilies. Lord Reed's men guided them till the sun clambered above cedar crowns, then, at a hummock marked by a fallen weirwood limb, the guides halted. From here the path is yours, one said, offering Sansa a pouch of smoked fish. Keep the sun at your right and the gull calls ahead. Moat Cailin by sunset. Sandor thanked them with a silent nod. He adjusted the weight of his helm at his saddle but did not don it. Sansa noticed his calves steadier. Color returned to his cheeks. The fever's frailty had been replaced by a tempered resolve, hard like iron that had passed through flame and water both. They rode in silence, broken only by the croak of herons. Around noon the reeds thinned, and a wide expanse of mudflats broadened under hazy sky. In the distance rose Moat Cailin, a lichen-blotched ruin of black basalt towers. 3 hulks crouched on a low ridge that commanded the swamp road. Ramsay Bolton's banners, pink men flayed, bleeding, snapped from broken battlements. Sansa's stomach turned. We cross at dusk, Sandor murmured. Dark will hide us. They tethered the ponies deep in brush and waited as afternoon sun baked the flats. Sansa cleaned her dagger, Sandor coated his blade with dark oil. When the sky bruised purple, they crept forth. Rotten palisades ringed the old fortress now, a crude addition erected by Bolton men to funnel traffic through a single iron gate. 2 sentries lounged atop the threshold, bored, trading japes about women and wine. Sansa and Sandor crouched behind a chunk of collapsed masonry, listening. A diversion, Sandor whispered. He scanned the shadowed rampart. A loose coil of rope lay discarded near a half-built hoarding. He gestured. I climb, drop from behind, open the gate chains. You slip through. And you. Follow when I can. No, the resolve in her own voice surprised her again. We go together. He caught her chin, eyes molten in twilight. You've courage, girl, but not size. One scream and Bolton's hounds eat us both. She pressed a small bundle into his palm, a Cranagman's clay flask filled with pine pitch. Then light their kennel. Dogs chase fire. Sandor's lips curved, part admiration, part feral glee. Hells, little bird, you hatch schemes like crows hatch mischief. Night pooled. Sandor ghosted along the base of the palisade, scaling the rope with silent grace that belied his build. Sansa waited, counting heartbeats. Somewhere above, a muffled grunt, a thud. Then the grind of chains as the postern gate yawed a finger's breadth. She slipped inside. Shadows cloaked torn courtyards where drunk soldiers tossed bones beside the kennel. Their hounds lay caged in timber pens. Sansa crept to the straw pile near the pens and uncorked the flask. Pitch sloshed over straw and kennel door. She fumbled flint, struck twice, sparks died. Third strike birthed flame, straw whooshed into orange roar. Hounds erupted in frenzy. Soldiers cursed, stumbling to their feet as fire licked fur and wood. Above, Sandor swung down from a parapet, sword carving an arc that felled the nearest guard. The chaos swallowed shouts. Sansa sprinted across the courtyard toward the north exit, an arch half collapsed but passable. Sandor followed, but a gaunt man in flayed man's surcoat barred his way, halberd whistling. Sandor ducked, punched pommel into the man's gut, then split the halberd haft with a downward hack. Blade met flesh, the Bolton man screamed. Smoke thickened acrid. Sansa reached the archway but halted, unwilling to leave Sandor among sparks. As the gaunt man fell, another guard appeared atop steps, crossbow leveled. Sansa hurled her dagger. It spun end over end, striking haft first, yet enough to spoil his aim. The bolt flew wide. Sandor's sword followed, burying in the man's thigh. In seconds they were through the arch, pounding over causeway stones slick with moss. Behind, flames leapt high, kennels collapsing. Bolton horns blared like wounded beasts. But none gave chase. The fire threatened the powder stores stacked near the southern tower, and panic trumped pursuit. They did not stop until torch glow faded behind marsh fog. Sansa bent double, lungs searing. Sandor braced his hands on his knees, sweat darkening his hairline despite cool night air. After a moment he laughed, a deep, astonished bark. "Seven hells, girl. You tossed fire better than Blackwater ships." She laughed too, the sound bright as breaking ice. "You opened the gate." "Aye. But you lit the world." He caught her by the shoulders, gaze intent. "That dagger throw, was luck. Luck's a lie we tell when skill embarrasses." He brushed mud from her cheek, thumb lingering. The nearness of him, the wild triumph in his grin, the smoke still clinging to their clothes, it sent blood racing through her veins. Ahead, the causeway vanished into moon-silvered mist. Somewhere beyond, Winterfell waited, though news said it lay under Ironborn siege. Sansa steeled herself. Whatever state her home stood in, she would face it with iron in her belly and Sandor at her side if the gods allowed. They retrieved the ponies at dawn. Birds greeted the new day with raucous cries, unaware of the ruins smoking to the south. Sandor mounted first, leg steady. He offered his hand to lift her astride. She took it, feeling callous and warmth, and settled behind him. The neck opened before them, a labyrinth of cedar and sky, the air sharp with brine from northern seas. Sansa's heart beat in time with hoof and earth. She rested her cheek against Sandor's back, and as the warhorse found its steady stride, she whispered the vow she had forged from blood and fire. "Home, Sandor. We ride home." He did not answer with words. Instead, he pressed her hand against the pommel, fingers curling over hers. Silent oath, unbreakable as northern granite. Together they urged the weary beast north, toward the shadow of pines, toward towers of gray stone rising beyond the next horizon, toward the promise of snow-clad ramparts and wolves howling a welcome at last. The road beyond the neck unspooled like a ribbon of drowned iron, glimmering between peat-dark pools whose surfaces mirrored the sky's restless pageant of cloud. Dawn washed the world pale gold, and mist clung to the saddle leathers as Sansa and Sandor pressed north. Their ponies, sure-footed, shaggy creatures bred for bog and slope, snorted steam that curled behind them like guardian spirits, fading where the rising sun touched. They traveled at a measured pace, neither lingering nor racing time, for the ponies could not match a destrier's stride and Sandor's calf was healed but tender. Each hoofbeat thunked softly on the floating timber mats laid decades earlier by Cranach carpenters. The boards groaned under weight, dipped, and sprang back, leaving ripples to chase minnows through sedge-tasseled shallows. Her father had once told Sansa that these secret paths moved when they pleased, pulled by tides or storms. A map of the neck lasted only as long as the weather allowed. She felt the truth of it now. Every league carried the scent of change. Sandor kept watch ahead, shoulders squared, burned cheek shiny where old scar tissue met morning light. At times he would cock his head to listen as though the murmur of frogs might hide the rasp of drawn steel. At others he barked a gruff laugh when a crane flapped up, startled by the pony's passage, its lanky legs trailing like banners. The laughter surprised Sansa each time, a rough chisel carving something human from the stone of his face. They paused at midday to water the mounts on a hummock dotted with purple heather. Sansa unpacked dried eel gifted by the Crannogmen. She sliced it thin with her dirk, sharing equal portions. The meat tasted of smoke and brine. Sandor washed his down with a swallow from the skin of willow water, wiped his mouth on the back of one gauntlet, and drew a crude sketch in the sodden earth, 3 slashes to mark the causeway, a crooked line for the King's Road beyond. He stabbed an X in black loam. 2 days to Barrowdon if weather holds, he muttered. We follow those drumlins there, see? He pointed to distant, rolling rises barely visible through heat-wobbled air. Plenty of cover, less patrols. Will we find allies? She asked. Barrowton flies Dustin's colors. Old gods willing, they still honor the stag and wolf. He shrugged. But war makes banners flap whichever way fear blows. Keep that close. She nodded, though her thoughts already roamed ahead, conjuring memories of lordly halls where once she had danced in Winterfell's great room. Heat rose behind her eyes. She blinked it away. The path demanded attention now, each step purchased by vigilance. Afternoon clouds thickened, shrouding the sun. A chill rode the breeze, smelling of distant pine and hard earth. By twilight the bogs surrendered to firmer ground, knuckled ridges of glacial till, strewn with frost-blunted boulders and stubby birch groves. Crickets replaced frogs as the evening chorus. They made camp beneath a leaning juniper whose twisted branches clawed at the sky like skeletal fingers. Sansa gathered deadfall twigs while Sandor dug a shallow fire pit. She had learned how to read his silences, this one coiled with unease. When sparks finally caught the tinder, he sat with his back to the flame, gaze fixed east. Something stalks, he said. Wolves, she guessed, remembering the mournful cries that had haunted recent nights. Not four-legged. He rested a hand on his sword pommel. Smelled smoke earlier, campfires that shouldn't be. Scouts, maybe? Ireborn stragglers, maybe worse. Bolton's men. Could be. Could be deserters looking to cut throats for boots. His lips twisted. The North's full of dead kings' ghosts now and hungry living who wish they were ghosts. Sleep came light and fractured. She dreamed of Lady padding beside her, fur damp with marsh water, and of a sable hound pacing the opposite bank. Their reflections mingled on the still surface until ripples dissolved them both. Morning found the world blanketed in sea fog so dense the nearest spruce trunks faded to watercolor blur. Even sound felt muffled, as though the air were thick wool. They ate cold oatcakes and saddled up. Sandor insisted on a slow walk, ears sharp for ambush behind drifting white walls. They had gone scarcely half a league before the fog shredded and shapes emerged. 3 men arrayed across the trail, mail corselets hacked short for ease of movement, axes dark with pitted rust. One wore a ragged cloak of pink and white squares, the flayed man bleached by rain. Behind them lurked a 4th figure, taller, wrapped head to calf in a fur-lined cape of dire wolf gray. Only when he stepped forward did Sansa see the pale half-mask sewn of human skin that covered his cheeks and lips, stitched at the eye holes with red thread. Her breath stalled. Sandor's sword hissed free. Well now, the masked man drawled, voice muffled by the grisly leather. What are a dog and a cub doing so far from their kennel? The 3 thugs advanced, blades low. Sansa's pony shivered. Sandor spat. Tell Ramsay Snow his banner's burning at Moat Cailin. You lit that little bonfire? The mask tilted in admiration. He'll want your skull for a lantern, I wager. Come take it yourself. Steel rang like iron bells as the first thug lunged. Sandor blocked, riposted, carving a bloody X across the man's chest. A second attacker swung an axe meant for Sansa's thigh. She jerked her reins, the pony sidestepping so the blade bit empty air. Before the man recovered, she slashed downward with her dirk, scoring a cut along his forearm. He yelped, dropping the axe. Sandor engaged the 3rd, their weapons clanging. Fog swallowed the clash, mist swirling with each parry. Sansa saw the masked leader circle, knife glimmering wicked short as a butcher's skinner. He moved with sinuous grace, eyes fixed on her. She kicked her pony forward, but marshy ground sucked at hooves. The masked man closed distance in 3 silent strides. His knife flicked. She felt fabric tear at her sleeve, cool air kissing skin. Adrenaline drowned fear. She whipped the reins, pivoting the pony, swung the dirk in a wide arc. The blade scored across the leather mask, shredding stitches. He recoiled, blood blooming where threads snapped. Hatred flared in his eyes. He feinted left, then drove low. She blocked once, twice, the force jarring her shoulder. A third strike slipped past. Pain lanced her ribs. She gasped, dizzy, but clung to consciousness. Images of Winterfell's gods would flashed. Her mother kneeling at the heart tree, whispered prayers swirling with snowflakes. She would not die nameless in the fog. Sandor finished his opponent with a brutal knee to the groin, spinning in time to see blood on her tunic. Rage twisted his scarred features. He barreled forward, smashing the masked man aside with shield edge. Knife clattered away. Sandor pinned the foe against a birch trunk, forearm grinding throat. "Name," he snarled. The wounded man gagged. "Reek," he choked, voice trembling though lips curled in contempt. "I had another once," he flayed it away. Sandor's sword pressed under the man's jaw. "Tell Ramsay his kennel stinks of dead men." Reek's tongue licked stitched lips. "He'll carve your eyes, Clegane. He'll make you sing." Sandor's blade punched upward, ending threat and taunt alike. Blood sprayed across bark, dark against white. Fog swallowed crimson rivulets. Sansa slid from the saddle, legs trembling. Sandor caught her before she crumpled. He pressed a hand to her side. Crimson wet his glove. She hissed. "Shallow," he judged after a glance. "Hurts like hell but won't gut you." From his pouch he produced a strip of cloth, bound the wound tight. His hands lingered, gentle despite urgency. She forced breath steady. "I'm all right." He met her gaze, something tender and fierce battling in the good eye. "You're iron-forged, girl." They stripped the dead of coin and a waterskin, wiped blades clean, and left bodies for wolves. Fog thinned as they rode, sunlight spearing through in brilliant shafts. Sansa let the pony follow Sandor's mount. She focused on counting heartbeats, on tamping pain to a dull ember. Each mile north felt like earned ground. By dusk they reached the edge of spruce forest sloping toward low plains. Grasslands rippled lilac under sinking sun, ravens wheeled overhead, crying their harsh benedictions. In the distance, 2 weather-smoothed barrows loomed like crouching giants. Between them wound a cart track leading to Barrowton, once seat of the Barrow Kings, now a market town famed for sheepskins and barley beer. But Barrowton's walls bore fresh scars. As they approached in twilight, Sansa saw fire-blackened palisades and gaps patched with hastily raised stakes. Refugees huddled outside the gate, clutching bundles, pleading with guards in dust and colors. Brown banners quartered by black hounds. Torches guttered. A chill wind carried faint sobs. Sandor frowned. "Looks like Ironborn paid a visit." They dismounted among the crowd. A guard captain, cheeks bristling with frost-rimmed beard, eyed Sandor's grim visage and half-hidden blade. "Town's full," he barked. "No room for Sellswords." "We aren't Sellswords," Sansa said, stepping forward despite throbbing side. She drew back her hood. Gasps rippled among onlookers as torchlight illuminated stark pale skin. Auburn hair shorn but unmistakable. "I am Sansa Stark, daughter of Eddard, rightful lady of Winterfell." Shock painted the captain's expression. He bent knee before wits caught, muttering apologies. Soon they were ushered inside. Word spread fast. Murmurs trailed like sparks in dry grass. Sansa fought blush and nausea alike, ducking beneath archway shadow. She had dreamed of northern welcome, yet the raw need in these faces unnerved her, like parched soil desperate for rain. Lady Barbary. Dustin received them in the ruined Great Hall, where roof beams propped by trestles left patches of starlight to pierce smoke from hearth braziers. She sat on a tall chair of carved elm, dressed in sable trimmed with fox fur, eyes black as coal and as keen. Years had etched lines at her mouth, but more from bitterness than age. She studied Sansa long, then flicked glance to Sandor. "So Ned Stark's girl rides with Tywin's dog," she said, voice smooth as oiled steel. Sandor's hand twitched near sword hilt. Sansa answered swiftly. Sandor Clegane saved me from King's Landing and from Ramsay's men. Without him I would not stand before you." Lady Barbrae's gaze measured truth. At last she inclined her head in acknowledgement, not a bow. "Then Barrowton owes him guest right, though my hall is charred and my stores thin." She gestured to benches near the hearth. "Sit, eat what we can spare, and tell me how the Lannister girl escaped her silk cage." Servants brought trenchers of barley pottage, weak but hot, and cups of small beer. Sansa recounted their journey in broad strokes: riot, flight, Southron dangers, omitting tender moments round campfires, though Lady Dustin's dark eyes missed little. When the tale reached Moat Cailin, Barbrae's thin smile sharpened. "Ramsay will howl," she murmured. "He had half the north bottled south of that ruin." She sipped beer, thoughtful. "Robb Stark sent orders for me to muster horse and ride east, but Ironborn raids clipped my wings. Perhaps your fire has opened a road." Sansa's pulse quickened. "I must go to my brother or to Winterfell if Ironborn still hold it." Barbrae stirred embers with an iron poker. Sparks skittered upward. "Winterfell burned 2 moons ago. Theon Greyjoy sacked it, then vanished like mist when Bolton men marched." She leaned back, gaze fixed on Sansa's stricken face. "Now Ramsay claims the title of Prince of Winterfell by right of conquest. His father bids the North bend knee." Grief and rage warred inside Sansa. Theon, once her brother's friend, her own childhood shadow, had put torch to her home. Ramsay wore her father's halls like stolen skin. She swallowed bile. "Robb will not allow it." "Robb bled at the Twins' Crossing, wrangling Fry Pride," Barbrae said. "Word is he weds some river girl, slighting Lord Walder. The North fractures." Sansa forced herself to breathe. "Then we must knit it." She met Barbrae's gaze steady. "I will rally our bannermen. Winterfell is not for krakens or flayed men." Lady Dustin's lips curved, half amused, half sardonic. "Bold words from a maid with one hound." She tapped chin. "Yet Starks have ruled dead places before. And I owe Ned some ghost of courtesy, though he stole my lord husband's bones for burying far from me." Her smile hardened. "I'll loan 30 riders to escort you to Deepwood Motte. Glover men gird for retaking the coast. They'll carry your voice further." Sansa bowed from the waist, pain tugging at bandage. "You have my gratitude." Barbrae's gaze flicked to Sandor. "My smith can re-rivet your mail, Clegane. You'll need it thicker in these parts." Sandor grunted assent. They slept that night in a loft above the mews, the only chamber left uncharred. Sansa lay beneath a wool blanket, listening to hawks' restless shuffling in cages below, the creak of timbers answering wind. Far across the hall, Sandor leaned against a beam, sword across his knees. Lamplight etched his profile in gold and shadow. She studied the planes of his scar, the stern set of his brows softened by exhaustion. "Do you ever rest?" she whispered. He shrugged. "Dreams bite harder than wakefulness." She rose, crossing the creaky boards. The wool blanket dragged behind like a night cloud. She sat beside him, shoulder brushing his arm. "Then let the dreams come. I'll stand watch for once." He huffed a laugh. "Lo, you've a hole in your ribs." "Only a scratch, my maester," she teased, repeating his earlier words. She nested the blanket over both of them, leaning her head on his unscarred shoulder. For a heartbeat he tensed, then exhaled, muscles loosening. Outside, wind sighed through broken shutters, carrying scents of peat smoke and distant pine. She felt the slow rise and fall of his chest, a lullaby steadier than any September hymn. When dawn ghosted the sky, Sandor's head rested atop hers, breath warm in her hair. She eased away, blanket sliding. His lashes flickered, he woke with a muttered curse at his own lapse, but she smiled and squeezed his hand before he could speak. A silent pact. They rode out by mid-morning with Lady Dustin's 30 riders, lean men and women clad in patchwork leather, armed with boar spears and tall yew bows. Their captain, a hard-jawed woman named Hara, led on a black roundsea. She spoke little, but her eyes missed nothing. Each crossroad she circled once, checking for sign. The country north of Barrowton opened into rolling heaths tufted with mauve heather and wind-bent grass. Pale gravestones jutted at angles, the barrow fields where the first men's kings slept beneath earthen domes. Sansa felt their presence, a weight of watchful silence. Now and again a rider doffed cap when passing a barrow, muttering old prayers. On the second evening they reached a lean-to way station abandoned months earlier. Hara's scouts reported fresh hoofprints, unshod, splayed. Wildlings or poachers? Guards were set double, no fire was lit. The company dined on cold salt mutton. Night pressed thick. Sansa found sleep elusive. She rose and stepped outside. Clouds scraped close overhead, hiding stars. Only the western horizon showed faint glow of half-moon behind ragged veil. She wandered to a ridge where stone cairns overlooked heath. There she knelt, palms flat on damp moss, and whispered into the wind. "Father, guide me. Mother, give me courage. Bran, Rickon, wherever you are, know I come home." A crunch of heather announced Sandor's approach. He halted a respectful distance, silhouette broad against dim sky. "Thought you'd fall into a ditch." She shook her head. "I was speaking to ghosts. Plenty of those." He shifted weight. "Your pain, how is it?" "Throbs, but healing." She rose, facing him. The wind lifted strands of her hair. "Did you ever speak to ghosts, Sandor?" He snorted. "Mine would bite. Maybe they wait to be heard." She stepped closer. The scent of leather and steel enveloped her. "You saved me again today. Only because you cut that bastard's mask first. We save each other." She searched his eyes. Moonlight found the green flecks in his good iris, softened the scarred half-to-gray relief. "In King's Landing you called me little bird. Yet you've given me wings. That wings sprout in mud." But his voice gentled. "Still, I can fly from fear. Because of you." He breathed in sharply, as if the words were a blade sliding between ribs. His hand lifted, hesitated, then brushed her cheek where no wound lay. She leaned into the rough caress. His palm trembled. "If I had wings," she murmured, "I'd carry you too." A growl somewhere between laughter and grief rumbled in his chest. He started to speak, but a shout erupted from Camp Hara's alarm. They pivoted, drawing weapons. Shapes swarmed the way station, wiry figures in rag-stitched cloaks, wielding crude axes. Wildlings free south of the wall had raided since wars pulled garrisons north. Dustin riders engaged, steel flashing in moon haze. Sandor sprinted downslope, Sansa at his heels. He barreled into the melee, blade singing. Sansa darted to flank, dirk slashing tendons of one raider lunging at Hara. The woman captain nodded grim thanks, swung her spear to skewer another. The fight was brutal but brief. Wildlings broke when leader fell beneath Hara's spearhead. Survivors fled into darkness. A few Dustin riders nursed cuts, 2 ponies lay dead. Yet company held. Hara wiped blood from cheek. "Good thing your hound's ears are sharp," she told Sansa. Then turning to Sandor, "You, dog, take my thanks. Might lose fewer steeds if you ride guard with me hence." Sandor grunted, but nod indicated assent. Dawn broke crimson, gilding the heath with false warmth. They buried 2 dead wildlings, no cairn, just earth turned atop bodies, wind to carry their names to whatever gods they kept. Days passed beneath restless skies. Heather gave way to dense pine forests where the air smelled of resin and snowmelt. Sansa's wound knit, she could ride upright without dizziness. Sandor sparred each evening with Dustin men, favoring longsword then teaching them reckless yet effective close-quarter tricks. His laughter grew more common, though still hoarse, as though each chuckle surprised his throat. They exchanged stories on the trail, Hara telling of her youth hunting elk near the Silver Flow. Sansa sharing Winterfell harvest feasts, the crackle of chestnuts in great hall hearths. Even Sandor offered one memory, quiet voice recounting a pup he'd once fed scraps behind Casterly Rock kennels, small thing that trusted him until Gregor found it. The silence that followed told the rest. Sansa reached and squeezed his wrist, he allowed it, eyes distant. On the 7th evening, towering oaks rose through mist, draped in pale moss-like aged beards. Scout whistles summoned them to a clearing where weathered stone pylons marked the border of Flint lands. Beyond, smoke spiraled in thin columns, campfires of northern Levy encampment. Hara rode ahead under white flag. Moments later, banners unfurled, silver fist of House Flint, stone bear of Mormont, mailed fist of Glover. A barricade parted and riders hailed them with cheers when word spread of Ned Stark's daughter returned. Sansa felt weight lift yet grow heavier, expectation piled upon fragile hope. In the command tent she met Lady Meage Mormont, broad-shouldered and formidable, wearing mail caked with mud. The she-bear embraced Sansa as kin, near crushing ribs. "Your mother's eyes," she declared, wiping her own with rough thumb. "Robb will roar when he sees you." "What of Winterfell?" Sansa pressed. "Still ash and bones. Bolton bastard prowls, but Robb pushes from south. We march meet him at Moat Kale did rather." Lady Mormont's brows rose. "Word says Bolton lines broke. That you're doing?" Sansa's cheeks flushed. "We lit his kennels." The she-bear threw back her head and laughed like a storm over rocks. "That'll set Ramsay squealing." "Good. He shall squeal more when Mormont claws find him." That night a feast of sorts was thrown, bread, turnip stew, bear meat charred on spits. Drums thudded, warriors danced in mud. Sansa was seated at the main fire. Veteran captains toasted her courage, young squires stared wide-eyed. She glimpsed future alliances forming. Threads she could weave if careful. Sandor kept to the edge, gnawing a bare rib. A group of Northmen eyed him warily. One, a scar-faced flint sergeant, spat ale. Might be the lion's cur is a spy, he growled loud enough for all. Sansa rose, calm as snowfall. This man bled to bring me home, she said, voice carrying. He faces wolves, krakens, and flayed men alike. If trust is measured in wounds, he earned it thrice. The sergeant hesitated, then nodded once, anger bleeding into reluctant respect. Sandor met Sansa's gaze across the fire, silent gratitude. Later, beneath pine silhouettes, they stood alone. Embers drifted like fireflies. You defend me before men who'd gut me, he said. As you defended me before mobs and masks. He scrubbed hand through hair. I'm no Northman. When your brother crowns you lady, they'll expect polished knights, not burned butchers. She stepped close, resting palm on his chest plate where heart beat strong. I expect truth and steel. And you are both. His breath hitched. Moonlight traced vulnerability in his scarred lines. He lifted her hand, pressed lips to knuckles. A nightly pledge both awkward and profound. She felt the tremor in that kiss, the hesitance of a man unpracticed in gentleness. 2 days hence, Ravens arrived with news. Robb Stark's host breaking camp near the Fever River, marching to confront Lannister forces encroaching from the south. Lady Mormont meant to join him. Sansa resolved to ride to the king, though the route curved west before veering north again. She would place herself before her brother, lend counsel born of southern courts and northern journey alike. Sandor saddled their ponies at dawn. As he tightened girth straps, Sansa noticed he wore a new surcoat. Brown felt stitched with neither lion nor dog, blank save for a single white thread woven into shape of a small seven-pointed star at the collar. A subtle mark, perhaps nothing. She touched it. Hara's needlework, he mumbled. Said blank cloth suits a blank-named man. Your name is not blank to me, she whispered. He looked away, throat working. Mount up, little bird. They rode with Mormont vanguard. Pine gave way to open tundra dusted with early snow, tiny flecks swirling in wind, harbingers of the long night that would come sooner here. Far off, the shivering sea glinted like cracked glass. One evening after long march, the column bivouacked beside the Fever River, its black water roiling with melt from northern ice fields. Robb Stark's banners fluttered on the opposite bank, dire wolf on gray, crowned by ice-hardened wind. Fires dotted hills beyond, an army's heartbeat of glowing embers. Sansa's chest constricted. Home, in flesh and steel. Lady Mormont hailed a ferry barge. As planks creaked under weight of horses and mail, Sansa stood at prow, Sandor beside her. The river hissed against hull, breaths plumed in cold twilight. Torches lined the far shore. Amid them a figure rode down stone steps. Tall, cloaked in fur, sword at hip. The ferry grounded. Sansa stepped onto pebbled strand. The figure dismounted. He pulled back his hood. Robb, older, leaner, crownless yet regal, eyes blue as last river, hair wind-tangled. For a heartbeat he stared in disbelief, like a man glimpsing a legend thought lost. Then he strode forward and she ran, ignoring pain as stitches pulled. They collided in embrace. His arms wrapped her tight, lifting feet from earth. She wept into wolf fur collar. He whispered her name again and again. When at last they parted, Robb's gaze shifted to Sandor, wary. Sansa spoke before judgment could fall. Brother, this man delivered me across half the realm, through fire and blood. He stands under my protection as I stand under yours. Robb studied Clegane, eyes narrowing, then offered warrior's clasp. I remember you beside the Mad King's son, he said. But death's way more than banners. You have my thanks. Sandor accepted grip, stiff but sincere. Your sister's courage led us here. They followed Robb up to King's Pavilion. Along the way soldiers knelt or saluted Sansa, whispering blessings of old gods. She sensed momentum shifting, the name Stark gathering wind again. Inside, a round oaken war table strewn with carved markers, Robb introduced her to Great John Umber, Galbart Glover, Meege Mormont, and Lord Edmure, recovered from Frey's Light. Plans sprawled, trapping Tywin's outriders, reinforcing Deepwood Motte, retaking Winterfell when roads froze and Ironborn's supply faltered. Sansa listened, offering insight on Lannister temperaments, Joffrey's ruthlessness, Cersei's vanity, Tyrion's cunning. The council ended past midnight. Robb led her to a smaller tent where a brazier glowed. Candles lit his tired smile. Mother will weep with joy when Raven reaches Riverrun, he said. You endured horrors, yet you shine like snow light. She squeezed his hand. I am not alone. She told him then of Arya lost, Bran and Rickon believed dead, though whispers spoke of wolves roaming Skagos. Robb's shoulders sagged, but resolve hardened eyes. We are Starks, he said. Winter tests us, but we do not break. She nodded. Let me help. I can speak for you to houses doubting your crown, a daughter's plea may temper pride. You'll ride with Meej to Bear Island, her skiffs will ferry you to White Harbor. Manderley still weighs oaths. Your words could tip the scales. He clasped her shoulders. Take whom you trust. Her gaze drifted toward camp shadows where a tall figure sharpened sword beneath a torch. She smiled. I know exactly whom. Days later, under a sky the color of tempered steel, a small company set sail from Bear Island's icy coves. Meej Mormont on her bear-proud longship, 50 shield maidens, Sandor Clegane cloaked in salt spray, and Sansa Stark standing at the bow, hair whipping like wildfire banner. She watched the horizon where the green-gray curve of the world kissed remote stars and felt in her bones the pulse of destiny, cold, relentless, but alive. Beyond the curve waited White Harbor's granite quays, the high road to dread-shrouded Winterfell, and the reckoning of wolves with krakens and flayed men alike. Sansa straightened, wind-filling lungs with brine and promise. She was Stark of Winterfell, forged in lion courts and tempered by flame. And beside her, a hound stood guard, scarred, loyal, unbroken. Together they sailed into the widening north toward battles uncounted and songs yet unsung, carrying in their hearts the unquenchable ember of home. Waves slapped the hull in tireless cadence, a vast percussive heart beneath the deckboards. Through a tangle of rigging Sansa watched dawn unfurl thin ribbons of rose and apricot across the horizon, painting the shivering sea into hammered copper. Bear Island shrank to a smudge of pine-dark silhouette astern. Ahead stretched only water, gulls, and promises carved in salt wind. The longship sea claw sliced onward, oars at rest for now, square sail billowing with a westerly that stank of kelp and distant storms. Meej Mormont strode the afterdeck like a captain born, her greaves glinting wet bronze as she barked orders along the gunwales. Shield maidens hurried to obey, laughter loud in the spray, girls who wore bear claw fetishes on leather cords and thought nothing of blood or cold. Sandor Clegane kept to the starboard midships, sharpening a boar spear he had taken liking to, every scrape of whetstone a slow heartbeat. His new wolf-gray cloak snapped behind him, salt crystals already whitening the folds. Sansa stood near the prow, gloved hands wrapped round the curved strake. Night's dream still clung to her lashes. She had walked a corridor of snow-laden weirwoods, each trunk carved with a stark face that opened its mouth to sing, but no sound came. Only rushing wind carrying her father's scent of leather and cold steel. She let the sea's chill breath scour away the lingering ache, then turned as Sandor approached. He thunked the spear half to deck. Gray clouds brooding northeast. Storm by midday, the she-bear says. Will the ship hold? Built by islanders who fish among icebergs. She'll dance. He tipped his head, studying her face with that lopsided intensity that always prickled heat beneath her skin. You slept little. The deck creaks like old bones. Dreams creak louder. Happens. A gust billowed his cloak. He stepped closer, shielding her with sheer presence. When storm hits, stay near the mast. Less pitch there. She nodded. Thank you, Master Mariner. He snorted, then touched the point of her hood where wind tugged loosened strands. Tie this tighter, or Spray'll knot it to your skull. Sansa tightened the laces, smiling despite herself. Thunder grumbled on the far horizon. By mid-morning clouds rolled down like iron anvils. Wind whipped to a howl, driving crests that crashed white against the prow. Sailors reefed the canvas, lashing it reef by reef while rigging shrieked. Rain burst from the underside of clouds, cold nay. Fleas stinging cheeks. Sansa found refuge at the mast's foot, one arm looped around a stay, the other clutching bundle of spare rope she had been told to keep dry. Sandor braced beside her, feet spread, spear but wedged into scupper hold to free his hands if need rose. The sea claw plunged off wave crests, timbers groaning like giants rousing under mountains. Each trough swallowed sky, leaving only green-black walls of water. Salt spray soaked Sansa's cloak until it clung like lead, hair whipped free, lashing her eyes. Yet terror never rooted. Beneath the chaos thrummed a fierce exhilaration, the sense of being hammered into something new, steel-tested in forge and quenched in storm. A monstrous wave reared ahead. Hold! Meej roared. Oars shipped, every woman seized rope or rail. The crest broke over bow, seawater sluicing down deck in knee-deep river. Sansa's feet slid, her grip slipped wet hem. Sandor snagged her waist, hauling her against his chest as the wash roared past, dragging barrels and a bucket or two toward stern scuppers. She felt his heartbeat thundering through wet leather as if it were her own. Minutes or hours blurred in wind and water. At last the squall blew itself ragged, rain eased to drizzle, and waves settled into long rolling swells mottled pewter. The sun burned a ragged hole through cloud anks, silver like gilding foamy wake. "7 hells," Sandor muttered. "I'll keep horses beneath me." Sansa pressed hair from her face, giggling despite chattering teeth. "And miss such refinement?" He grumbled, but a reluctant grin tugged the unscarred corner of his mouth. Lightning flickered miles behind, one final protest of the departing storm. 2 days later the fleet, Sea Claw and 2 smaller sister ships passed the chalk cliffs of Scar Tower Point, entering the inlet that cradled White Harbor. Fish gulls swirled overhead keening. The city on the White Knife unfurled along terraced slopes. Sturdy granite walls topped by watchtowers flying Manderley's white merman on sea-green field. Harbor waters were crammed with cogs and carracks, many rigged with makeshift sails of patched linen. Refugee craft from torched coastal villages seeking food and safety. Meege steered toward the inner pier, horns sounding her colors. Dockhands scrambled, heaving lines. When gangplank dropped, a knot of armored guards awaited. Manderley men in sea-green cloaks, flanking a rotund knight with ringlets of silver hair and a trimmed beard as frothy as surf. Sir Marlon Manderley bowed low. "On behalf of Lord Wyman, I welcome Lady Sansa Stark beneath my uncle's roof," he boomed. His eyes flicked to Sandor and lingered on his scars. "And guest right extends to her companions." Sandor's lips quirked. "Dog, brute, companion. Take your pick." Sansa inclined her head. "Thank you, sir. Lord Wyman's hospitality is famed on both coasts. Alas, our larders shrink with every ship of small folk, but the kitchens will manage." Marlon gestured toward a litter. "My lord is confined by gout yet eager to receive you without delay." She stepped onto the pier, knees wobbling at unmoving earth. Sandor followed, spear slung across back. The smell of roasting cod and alder smoke drifted from taverns. Merchants hawked barrels of pickled herring, their shouts layered atop gull calls. Yet along every street Sansa saw lean faces and beggars shaking wooden bowls, war's aftertaste. Through the fish gate and up the old Mint Row they went, cobbles slick with river mist. White Harbor's houses were 3 and 4 stories, timber-framed with steep mossy roofs. Blue and silver pennants drooped damply from balconies. Citizens paused mid-task, whispers trailing, "Stark, Ned's girl," returned. Within Newcastle's courtyard a host of serving folk lined the path, heads bowed. The great doors opened onto a hall warm with braziers and thick with the scents of cinnamon-laced bread and venison stew. At center, upon a cushioned chair, Lord Wyman Manderley reclined, a mountainous man swathed in ermine robe, gout-swollen feet propped on an ivory footstool. His jowls quivered with emotion as Sansa knelt before him. "No, child, rise," he rumbled, voice deep as harbor foghorn. "The blood of Winterfell kneels only to the king in the north." She stood. He clasped her hands between pudgy fingers. "I feasted at your father's table, little lady, and my heart weeps for his loss. But wolves yet walk, the north remembers." Tears threatened her composure. She blinked them back. "My lord's words warm the winter of my grief. Then may my kitchens warm your belly." He signaled, and servants bore platters, salt-crusted salmon, honeyed crab claws, loaves steaming fragrant. While guests found places on benches, Wyman turned to Sandor. "And who is this Iron Mountain?" Sandor bowed shallowly. "Sandor Clegane, lord. Only a sword that ferried Ned Stark's daughter through half a realm of vipers." The lord's eyes gleamed. "If ever you grow weary of wandering, know that Manderley halls shelter loyal blades." Sandor muttered something about fat lords and fish, but the corners of his mouth twitched. Dinner rolled into evening. Harpists played sea songs, Meege traded Bear Island boasts with White Harbor captains. Sansa ate sparingly, senses keen for politics. After courses cleared, Lord Wyman beckoned her to private solar where maps littered a walnut table. Candles cast gold pools. The old lord's jovial facade slipped, revealing steel beneath that. "The Boltons petition me to swear fealty," he said. "Ramsay claims Winterfell by conquest, the Dreadfort by blood. Yet Robb remains my king. With Frey's muttering and Lannisters ever scheming, I need Stark presence to bind wavering hearts." Sansa drew breath. "I carry no crown, my lord, only my name." "Sometimes a name outweighs gold." If you speak in the wolf's den tomorrow, before merchants and nobles, pledging that Robb fights on and Winterfell shall rise, I will send ships south with grain and men to bolster his host. She thought of packed hall, all eyes upon her. Nerves fluttered, but she steadied them. I will speak. Good. Wyman's gaze shifted to Clegane, who stood guard near the door. Your hound snarls at whispers. Keep him close, the shadows here teem with tongues loyal to coin. That night, as torches guttered in corridor scones, Sansa paced a chamber overlooking moonlit river. Rehearsed phrases tumbled in her mind like dice. Fur-lined mantle lay across chairback, the glass window cracked tiny frost feathers with each breath of night air. A knock. Sandor entered, ducking low beam. Checking for blades beneath bed, he said. Only ghosts. She smiled faintly. Do they scare you? Ghosts I can spit on. Knives worry me more. He prowled perimeter, inspecting shutters, then leaned against wall. Candlelight lined muscles through tunic as he watched her. You'll make speech fine. Voice like bells. It must be more than bells, she whispered. These men weigh life on words. He crossed to her. When you sing of Winterfell, you believe. Belief cuts deeper than steel. She looked up into the one green-gray eye, saw reflections of hearth flame and some tenderness he could never veil. Will you stand with me tomorrow? Try keeping me away, he said low. Without thought she rose on toes and brushed lips to his cheek. Scarred flesh rough beneath salt-chapped mouth. He stiffened, then softened almost imperceptibly, exhale warm on her forehead. For heartbeat upon heartbeat they stood so, storm and girl, until she stepped back, cheeks burning. Good night, Sandor. His voice a husky scrape. Sleep, little bird. Yet sleep came only after long moment of listening to his boots fade down corridor. The Wolf's Den was ancient, a looming stone keep repurposed as city hall, its vaulted nave crowded now with merchants in purple doublets, salt-stained fisherwives, hedge knights, scribes, even free folk envoys. Torches ringed pillars, banners of Manderley and Stark hung side by side. Sansa waited behind a crimson curtain, dress of dark green wool clasped by dire wolf brooch. Heart thundered. Ser Marlin introduced her with flourish, the curtain swept aside. Murmurs rippled. She advanced to dais, Sandor just off her right shoulder, hand on sword hilt. She faced the crowd, breath-drawing hush. She saw skepticism in older guild masters, hunger in orphans perched on rubble ledge, open hope in a blacksmith's soot-smudged face. She let that hope anchor her. Her voice rang clear, unvarnished. People of the North. I am Sansa Stark, daughter of Eddard and Catelyn, sister to King Robb, sworn to the old gods and the new. I come from fire and chains, but the snows of home still cling to my bones. She told them of King's Landing's gilt cages, of riot and escape, of torched Moat Cailin and Bolton cruelty. She spoke of Robb's banner yet flying, of northern honor, of Winterfell's halls echoing for their rightful children. Words flowed like river thaw, not courtly verse, but raw truth hammered by journey. When she finished, silence reigned. Then a murmur like wind through pines swelled to roar, cheers, fists pounding shields. Lady Manderley dabbed eyes with lace. Even grizzled dock foreman shouted oaths to the north. Lord Wyman levered himself upright on swollen ankles. White Harbor stands with Winterfell, he thundered. Bread, steel, and sails. Rapture shook the hall. Sansa sagged faint with relief. Sandor's hand steadied her elbow, unseen by crowd. Outside, snowflakes drifted soft as goose down, the first true snow of the coming winter. She lifted face to the hush, letting flakes melt on lashes. Children danced round her, chanted, "Wolf Maid, Wolf Maid." That evening ships were loaded, wheat, dried cod, bundles of pine spears. Ravens flew, bearing Wyman's pledge to Robb, Deepwood Mott, Barrowton. North rippled like waking beast, yet danger stalked the wake of hope. Word came that a sell-sail galley flying no sigil had slipped anchor at dusk, then vanished south, crew rumored to carry Bolton gold and sharp-eyed spies. Sandor cursed. Faces from White Harbor will reach Dreadfort ears before dawn. They had to outpace treachery. 3 days later, a column of 200 marched from White Harbor's North Gate, Manderley men-at-arms, Mormontshield maidens, Barrowton riders from Hara's band, and at their fore Sansa on a grey palfrey she named Morn. Sandor riding the black charger gifted by Meech. Snow fell heavier now, muffling hooves. Pines bent under weight, streams crusted with thin ice. They skirted Broken Branch Moor where rumors of bandit hosts lingered, but none dared attack a force so stout. Each night campfires crackled beneath spruce awnings. Sansa walked the lines, speaking with cooks, tending small wounds. Men who once muttered "Southern Lady" now met her eyes with steadfast trust. One dusk scouts returned breathless, Bolton outriders ahead, burning crofter cottages. A council convened among snow-laden oaks. Captain Hara urged swift assault, Meej favored flanking march to save time. Sandor leaned on sword, listening. Sansa pictured families fleeing, saw again King's Landing riot. She stepped forward. We strike at dawn, but with cunning. Rely on Night's Veil to guide survivors out. Plans formed quick, shield maidens circling south, Manderley archers knocking arrows frosted white, Clegane spearheading breach. Midnight draped the wood in black-blue quiet. Sansa waited with Meej behind a ridge, cold biting through cloak. When distant owl hooted thrice, the signal, she advanced with a small escort wielding not steel but a horn. Campfire glow rimmed a clearing where Bolton tents sagged under snow. Ramsay's men lolled, oblivious. Sansa stepped into torchlight and blew the horn thrice. Every head snapped up. Men of the Dreadfort, her voice rang. Hear Sansa Stark. Lay down arms and you will see dawn. Stand and the north will claim your hides. Shouts, curses. A crossbow twanged, bolt whisking past her cheek. In same breath, the forest erupted. Arrows hissed, bears roared war cries. Sandor burst through tree lean atop black charger, spear skewering the crossbowman. Chaos bloomed. Bolton fighters scrambled, but many threw weapons aside rather than face vengeful northern fury. The skirmish ended within heartbeats. Fires died under sudden snow kicked up in struggle. Sansa walked among captives, eyes hard. Carry message to your master, she told the least injured. Winterfell rises. Morning revealed freed crofters huddled behind ridge, children wide-eyed. Sansa ensured bread reached them from supply wagons, blankets from Manderley stores. An old woman pressed cold fingers to Sansa's cheek. Lady of Winter, she murmured. Snow deepened over following leagues. They crossed Long Barrow, passed beneath cliffs crusted with hoarfrost, then descended toward the Wolfswater. Rumor of their victories traveled faster than ravens. Clans sent skirmishers to join them, horns answered from vale to vale. A tide swelling. On a clear afternoon the party topped a rise and there, beyond outer farms flecked by snowdrifts, loomed Winterfell. Charred gate towers jutted black against pale sky, and the eastern wall gaped where stone had melted under oil fire. Yet the great keep still stood, grim and gray, frost blanketing angled roofs. Smoke curled from a few restored chimneys, Ramsay's hearths. Sansa's throat closed. Memories surged. Arya chasing cats across battlements, Bran clambering beams, catcalled nights wrapped in her mother's shawl. She felt Sandor's presence behind, silent sentinel. Meej gave orders, troops fanned into wedges. Scouts reported Bolton numbers, perhaps 300 inside, half-starved. Ramsay himself away on hunt for Black brothers, due back dusk. Then dusk shall trap him, Sansa said. They advanced under cover of late afternoon shadow, archers scaling abandoned postern, opening Sally Port from within, an old smuggler's trick Davos once taught Manderley men. Sansa entered last, heart hammering, cloak stirring ashes on ground familiar yet scarred. Halls echoed emptiness. She climbed the stone steps to the great hall dais, boots crunching on debris. At end stood the high seat of House Stark, oak and iron, direwolf sigil worn smooth by centuries of hands. Ramsay had draped a flayed man cloth across backrest. Sansa lifted it, tore it down, flung into hearth where embers still glowed. Fabric caught, flames licking pink figure till it shriveled black. Trumpet blasts outside. Ramsay's hunting party returned. Riders leading muzzled hounds slick with gore. When gatehouse barred and portcullis crashed, confusion fractured enemy lines. Crossbow quarrels flew. Northern arrows answered. Ramsay, pale-eyed and fox-grinning, howled orders but found towers manned by rebels. Meej roared charges. Sandor bellowed like thunder, driving spear through pale shapes amid snow swirl. Sansa watched from battlements as combat churned yard into crimson slush. She saw Ramsay spot her silhouette, his grin warped to snarl. He spurred hack toward keep door, seeking her. She descended spiral stairs, blade drawn though trembling. In cloistered yard he dismounted, letting horse gallop off riderless. Snowflakes haloed his matted hair. Eyes glittered same blue-white as sword he drew. Little dove grew talons, he hissed. I'll trim them. Boots thudded behind, Sandor emerging through archway. Ramsay laughed. Burnt dog fetching bones. Sandor pointed spear tip. Back away, bastard. But she's mine, my prize for torch and blade. Stark blood sweet as summer wine. Sansa stepped forward, steel raised. Your reign ends, cur. Voice steady. The North remembers. Ramsay lunged at her, faint high then low. She parried awkward, edge Jared. Sandor moved to intercept, but she called, mine. He halted, though every line of him screamed protect. Ramsay struck again, grin manic. He was quick, blade flicking snakes. She retreated, slipped on icy flagstone, barely caught balance. Steel rang echoing. He taunted, court dance failing you? Yet rage lit her nerves. She saw father's swordplay lessons given to Bran, recalled Robb's footwork. She shifted weight, angled blade. Next thrust she sidestepped, slapped flat of sword across Ramsay's knuckles. He cursed. She pressed, parried, cut sleeve. Blood welled. Enraged he charged, barking. She dropped low, hooking foot behind his knee. Snow Slick aided. He crashed onto back, breath whooshing. She leveled point at his throat. Yield, she said. He spat blood. I'll wear your skin for a banner, Sandor's spear, but slammed his ribs, cracking. Ramsay wheezed, eyelids fluttering. End it, Sandor growled, voice like gravel avalanche. Sansa met Ramsay's hate-bright gaze, saw madness, cruelty etched beyond redemption. She thought of burned Winterfell halls, children flayed near moat, Theon's betrayal, her own scars. She thought of tomorrow's North lacking space for such rot. She drove blade through his heart. Snowflakes drifted, melting on steel as she withdrew sword. She closed eyes, breathed once. Sandor's hand rested on her shoulder, weight steady, not guiding. Outside, cheers rose, Bolton banners tumbled from ramparts, replaced by dire wolf white and gray. Winterfell was free. Night came gentle. Fires roared in restored hearths, cooks scoured blackened cauldrons to stew venison with onions and ale. Survivors of Winterfell, servants who had fled or hidden, crept back, tears shining. Sansa greeted each by name remembered, old Nan's grandson Hodder carrying straw, Gage the cook wiping eyes, even Micken's apprentice clutching battered hammer. Robb's raven arrived before dawn, bearing words of both grief and triumph, battles won along Green Fork, Fry treachery bubbling, mother captured but alive. He wrote, hold Winterfell, little sister. It shall be beacon. She stood on battlements, parchment crinkling in gloved hand, watching torches of patrols weave in darkness below. Snow lay thick now, muffling world. Sandor approached, carrying 2 mugs of hot spiced ale. He handed one. How fares the king's scroll? He asked. War rages, yet hope grows. She sipped. Sweet heat warmed belly. He leaned on Crenel, nose red from cold. Castle suits you. It is home. She studied gate towers. I will mend walls, clear rubble, feed people. Winter is long. He grunted approval. Need a kennel master? She nudged his elbow. You'd be wasted on dogs. Dogs are honest. Men bite worse. Then stay as my sworn shield. Help me guard our north. His eye searched hers under starlight. Scarred lips parted. Oath and life both if you'll have them. I will. She set mug aside, placed gloved hands on either side of his face, rough scar, rougher stubble. She kissed him, soft but certain. He froze, breath catching, then wrapped arms around her, careful yet unyielding. Snowflakes settled on their hair, glimmering like new forged stars. Below, Winterfell's courtyards filled with laughter again, children chasing each other between long hall pillars, soldiers singing songs of hearth and harvest. The direwolf banners snapped crisp against moonlit sky. A fresh wind swept from the far north, carrying scents of pine and distant ice, but within the walls fires blazed warm. Sansa broke the kiss, forehead resting against his. We have much work. Aye. He wiped snow from her brow. But work worth sweat. Hand in hand they descended the winding steps to Great Hall where Mej Mormont hammered a new iron latch onto the door, where Hara instructed masons, where life beat strong. As dawn's first rays kissed the broken but living towers, Sansa Stark stepped across the threshold, her voice ringing authority and kindness both. Interlay ahead, ruthless and white, yet the hearth of the north had been rekindled by wolf and hound together, and its flame would not falter again. Snow sifted through the patched roof of the old armory in faint silver motes, settling on the broken helms and splintered shafts that littered the flagstones. It was an early dawn in the deepening heart of autumn, the sort of blue-white hour when silence clings even to breath. Sansa knelt beside a rack of swords warped by Ramsay's fire, blades her ancestors had carried into the Bloody Gate, the Redgrass Field, the trident, and she ran a gloved thumb over each ruined fuller as though tracing the ribs of fallen kin. Behind her, a brazier popped and hissed where damp birch logs fought to catch. She had slept little since the battle. 100 duties nipped at her heels, quartering garrison soldiers in empty towers, sending ravens to every bannerman who still owed the dire wolf allegiance. Rationing grain for the small folk once winter's full fist closed, listening, always listening, to murmurs of unrest in the south. Yet here, alone with scraped iron and the smell of forged soot, she allowed herself a pocket of quiet grief. Every melted sword sang a memory, her father's patient voice at practice yard railings, Rob's laughter when Bran outwitted a clumsy sparring partner, Arya's wild yelps as she darted beyond reach of Ser Roderick's wooden waster. Footfalls crunched outside, the door groaned. Sandor ducked beneath the lintel, shoulders dusted white, a thick wool cloak slung over one arm. His eyes found her in the gloom, softened. "Cold bite the fingers off you if you keep kneeling on stone," he rumbled. She offered a weary smile. "I was talking to ghosts," he grunted, crossing to the brazier. "Ghosts make poor company. They never shut up." Kneeling, he coaxed flame with a twist of kindling until hungry tongues licked high. Orange light spilled across the room, touching ruins of steel with false life. He set the cloak round her shoulders from behind, fastening the brooch, a tiny bear wrought in pewter, gift from Lady Meech. His hands lingered a heartbeat too long, radiating warmth that outshone the fire. "I've counted 35 swords too far gone to salvage," she said, tilting her head to meet his gaze. "But Micken's apprentice thinks the steel can be reforged if we secure new flux and coal." "Good lad," Sandor said. He picked up a half-melted longsword, twirled it thoughtfully. "Sharp edge or no, a man willing to swing matters most. Steel is just steel." "Still." She rose, settling cloak. "I would not let Winterfell's history rust any further." He placed blade on rack, turned to face her fully. Dawn's first rosy spears slipped through slanted shutters, haloing breath. "History's stubborn. You carve new lines, the old stay beneath. Like scars." She reached to brush knuckles along the faded burn on his cheek. He caught her hand gently, pressed her fingertips to the puckered skin himself, as though offering shared ownership of wounds no salve could mend. Then someone pounded on the armory door. "My lady," called a voice muffled by wood and snow. "Ravens from the south." Sansa and Sandor exchanged a glance, then strode out beneath a sky that promised heavier snow by midday. They found Lord Wyman's courier, pudgy cheeks flushed from chill, waiting near the broken weirwood bench outside the Great Hall. He held a slate-black raven under one arm, wax-sealed parchment clutched in mittened fist. Hara Dustin stood beside him in her riding leathers, expression grim. Behind her, half-dozen Manderley guards stamped and blew clouds into icy air. Sansa snapped the seal. Ink glinted oily blue in morning light. "To Lady Sansa Stark, rightful heir of Winterfell." The phrase moved north under Lord Ryman. 40 longships sail up the Fever River, flying Bolton and Kraken banners. Deepwood Mott braces, but numbers thin. I dispatch 50 knights, yet fear we arrive late. We beg your fast aid. The North must unite or perish piecemeal. Meege Mormont. Beneath, a hurried scrawl in different hand. Iron-born rumors speak of a new king out of Pike, crowning himself in the sea's navel. His captain's thirst for reaving. Sansa's breath fogged harder. The ink was 3 days dry. Meage's riders would be halfway to the coast by now. She looked to Hara. "How many mounted Dustin lances remain sound?" 32 fit, another dozen nursing aches," Hara replied. "But fresh snow slows. We cannot abandon Deepwood," Sansa said. "If Freys cut the coast road, White Harbor stands alone." Sandor folded arms, spear but crunching frost. Ryman Freys, a coward draped in Lord's veneer. One decisive blow could send his bastards fleeing like pigs. "Pigs still trample fields," Hara warned. "And longships burn villages faster than wolves can howl." Sansa paced, cloak swirling. Memory surfaced, her father's maps, blue eyes alight as he taught his children the weave of northern rivers. The Fever River curves through high bluffs west of Moat Cailin. Narrow water. If we fell trees across and meet them with fire arrows, she stopped, heart hammering. "A trap. Use terrain instead of numbers." "Need archers and axemen," Hara said. "I can lead those," Sandor offered. "Scouts know the deer paths now." Wyman's courier cleared his throat sheepishly. "Lord Manderley sent grain wains north 2 nights past. 20 wagons on the King's Road, each guarded by men who shoot straighter than most sailors. We could divert them to your ambush." Plans birthed themselves like sparks in dry pine, Sansa dictating ravens to command Wyman's wagons to the Fever Crossing, Hara assembling lances for flanking maneuver, Sandor selecting 20 archers skilled enough to fell a crow on the wing. The moment brimmed with urgency. Yet within Sansa spread a fierce serenity. Decisions came crisp. This was what Winterfell had raised her for. Leadership not of courts and silk but of hearth and spear alike. "Ride dawn tomorrow," she concluded, sealing letters with dire wolf wax. "I will hold Winterfell and gather every able body to your rear. May the old gods guard the crossing." Sandor gripped her forearm instead of bowing. "I'll return or burn the Freys on their own boats." "Return," she whispered, "and we can burn the boats together." He gave a sharp nod, then strode toward the stables where riders readied. As the column filed out, hoofs clacking on iced flagstones, Sansa climbed the gate tower to watch. Snow thickened. Flakes kissed her lashes like soft iron filings. Sandor rode at the vanguard, black charger blowing steam, spear upright. He paused beneath the portcullis, looked up. Their eyes locked through drifting white. She raised 2 fingers in solemn benediction. He answered by tapping gauntlet to breastplate once, pledge made steel, and then vanished into the trees. The days that followed blurred between quill, hammer, and frostbitten breath. Winterfell's courtyards rang with renewed industry, smiths pounding rivets into patchwork mail, young boys shaping arrows, girls stitching jerkin linings with rabbit fur. Sansa walked among them, praising, correcting, learning. She discovered the name of every orphan who had lost kin to Ramsay, assigned each small duty, oil lamps to polish, bolts to count, turning grief into belonging. At night she sat in Maester Luwin's ravaged turret, parchment spread across makeshift desk, mapping food stores. Rats scuttled between shattered shelves she'd set traps earlier. The flicker of flame glinted on bottles of tincture that had survived the sack. She marked each with neat script: henbane, white willow bark, poppy essence. Memory of long vigils beside Sandor's fevered form stoked resolve a knowledge would save again. Sometimes exhaustion drove her to the quiet of the godwood. There, beneath the hearttree's bloody leaves, she found a hush deeper than sleep. The face carved in pale bark seemed altered since her childhood, lips parted wider, eyes sadder. She knelt in the snow, confiding hopes and fears to the old gods even as ice numbed her knees. On the 4th dusk a horn blared beyond the walls, 2 short, 1 long. Not attack, return. She rushed to the gatewalk in time to see Hara's lances trotting beneath. They were spattered with mud and soot, but smiles split bearded cheeks. Wagons creaked behind, piled with barrels of fry provisions, sails from longships torn into trophies. And there in their midst rode Sandor, cloak singed at hem, face streaked black, yet alive, unbowed. Later, by feasting fires in the great courtyard, he told fragments beside a roaring cauldron of turnip stew, how they felled 20 spruce across the narrow bend, blocking river. How archers rained pitch-soaked shafts until ships turned torch against one another. How Ryman Fry abandoned his men for an upstream skiff only to meet Hara's lances at shore. Sansa listened, heart swelling with equal pride and sorrow for each life lost. She noted the new cut along Sandor's forearm, the bruises blooming on Hara's chin. Victory often looked so similar to defeat before the blood was washed. That night, long after revelry faded, she found Sandor seated alone outside the old kennel ruins, sharpening a dagger by moonlight. The Hound statues flanking the doorway lay shattered Ramsay's doing. Snow sifted through missing roof. He glanced up. Finished counting dead? She eased down beside him on a stone ledge. 7 Mandoli archers, 2 Dustin riders for crofters who carried messages. And Freys, she shook her head. Too many torches on water to count. A good tally for a battle, he said, tone neither proud nor callous. But they'll spin songs bigger than truth. The people need songs. Her breath fogged. They need meaning. Meanings for septons, he muttered, sliding whetstone. I only saw men blistering in fire. She touched his bandaged arm. You saved villages, Sandor. Families will greet winter alive because of you. His stare broke into something rawer. All my life deeds weighed in blood. Now you weigh them in lives kept. Strange reckoning. He set dagger aside, fingers flexing. I'll learn. She leaned her head to his shoulder, cloak mingling with his. For a moment both watched moonlight frost the snowdrifts piled against broken kennel gate. Wind keened faintly through void where roof once sheltered pups. The sound was lonely but less so while shared. You're rebuilding your pack, he said quietly, following her gaze. Bit by bit. We are, she corrected. He huffed soft assent. Winter's grip tightened. Snow lay as high as horses' knees, streams glassed over with milky ice. Yet Winterfell pulsed alive. Hara drilled young recruits in spear work beneath the south wall, Mead's shield maidens honed axe forms on straw men near mended smithy. Maester Lewin's successor, a raven-haired woman from the Eyrie named Maester Alice, withdrew to dusty library stacks when not overseeing splint kits and grindstone teeth. She lent Sansa tomes on northern harvest lore, freezing cellars, freshwater fish traps. One bitter afternoon Sansa stood on the battlements with Alice, eyes watering from wind. "The cellar's half empty," she said. "Even with Mandoli grain and fry stores, we risk famine." "True," the Maester agreed. "But the glass gardens show promise. Heat from hot springs still courses through pipes. Expand them, plant winter greens, snow peas, beetroot, cabbage." She tapped parchment. "I found notes in your father's hand once. He planned such, lacked time." Hope flared. Sansa summoned stonemasons, carpenters, and scrawled lists before dusk. Over next week's glass panes were scrubbed, broken arches braced with salvaged timber, soil turned and mixed with composted straw. She joined labor, palms blistering, cheeks smudged with loam. When the first pale sprouts unfurled beneath crystal-bright sunlight, laughter echoed down corridors that had known only screams months before. On the day the first cabbages sprouted, a rider arrived from the neck on a half-starved mare, an arrow through his mailed pauldron. Howland read sigil. His message, gasped between shivers, warned that Bolton scouts probed Crannog trails seeking passage for southern reinforcements. Winterfell's reclaimed strength rang hollow if enemies breached from behind. Sansa summoned council in what remained of the round tower. Meech slammed fist on table. "We'll march and snuff them, but snow slows heavy horse." Hara pointed to maps. "Reed knows marshes best. We send light units, guided by Crannog men. Ride fast." Sandor studied reading lines. "I'll lead. Swamps hide a man my size poorly, but fear hides worse." Sansa chewed lip. Sending him again meant nights of worry. But the plan was sound. Take 20. Move at dawn. If we guard Moat Caelan's gap, we choke Bolton flow. When they dispersed, she lingered in map room tracing finger along Serpentine River. Sandor paused in doorway. "You fret," he said. "I lead." "Same thing." He stepped nearer. Candlelight glowed off his scars. "I'll return. In one piece. Can't promise, pretty." He caught her hands, callous grip gentle. "But breath still in chest, I." She squeezed. "And ghosts quiet a moment longer." He bent to press a kiss against her brow, hot and rough, then strode out. 3 weeks trudged by like half-frozen snails. Messages came sporadic, ravens grounded by storms, riders delayed. Each dusk Sansa walked the battlements scanning white horizon for silhouettes. Duties consumed daylight. Organizing roof repairs, drafting edicts forbidding hoarding, comforting a child whose mother never returned from fields. Yet nights clawed at resolve. One moonless eve Hara found her pacing the great courtyard. "He'll come," the lance captain said gruffly. "I know." Sansa forced a smile. "How fare the drills?" "Blades sharper. Hearts warmer." Hara touched straw dummy they passed, stuffed with rags, crowned with burnt-out helm. "And your flame lights more than hearths, my lady." Sansa's cheeks warmed. She parted from Hara, seeking Godwood solace. Snowdrifts muffled steps. At the heart tree she knelt, whispering prayers she once recited only in childhood hush, for Bran's safety beyond the wall, for Rickon's mischievous grin, for Arya's restless feet. But tonight prayer drifted to Sandor. May his path find safe ground, may his wounds not fester, may he know he is more than steel and scar. Wind shifted. The howl of distant wolves rose, answering, perhaps, those quiet pleas. 2 mornings later, horns again at dawn, single long note, repeated thrice. Return of scouts. Sansa flew to gate. Snow blinded, she shielded eyes. Out of swirling white emerged shapes, Crannog rafts pulled by shaggy hill ponies, riders astride, spears upright. At their center Sandor Clegane lumbered, cloak rent by brambles, face smeared swamp mud, but strides strong. She ran despite deep drift, skirt soaking, until they met where new snow lay pristine. Words failed. She pressed hands to his cheeks, smearing mud. He leaned forehead to hers, exhaled shaky laugh. "They squealed like frogs," he whispered. "No passage south for Bolton now." Later, before hall fires, he recounted, ambush at Misty Causeway, Crannog darts felling scouts, how Sandor's spear turned 3 men into marsh posts. He tossed a bundle to floor, Bolton banners hacked into pieces. Cheers rang, ale sloshed. Yet Sansa watched his eyes, noted the tightness there. She led him away after to Maester Alice's quarters where she cleaned scratches, rubbed salve into bruised ribs. Candle glow danced over his torso, scarred and powerful. Her fingers paused at knotting muscle. Silence crackled like hearth cinders. "I thought I lost you," she breathed. "I was lost until you." His voice rougher than any bruise. He cupped her nape, their lips met salt, balm, shared breath. That night they lay in small chamber above the armory, two bodies entwined, heartbeats meshing like cogs. Snow-tapped shutters. Outside, Winterfell's towers cast orange halos against black sky. She traced the old burn across his neck, he traced the faint scar along her side left by masked Bolton. No pity, no shame, only testament to journey that forged them equal. When dawn's gray seeped, he whispered, "Not dog anymore. Call me Sandor only." She smiled. "And I'm not little bird." She gestured to dire wolf brooch glinting on bedside table. "I am wolf." "Then we hunt together," he said, and pulled her close. Word of their bond spread swifter than ravens. Some whispered behind gloved hands, "Highborn lady and burned butcher." Yet none could deny the partnership's strength. Where Sansa's voice soothed, Sandor's presence deterred. When rowdy Sel's words from the east arrived seeking coin, Sandor stood behind her at audience. His mere shadow convinced them to swear fealty without haggle. Lord Wyman returned to Winterfell on a massive sledge pulled by 6 shaggy aurochs, gout-ridden legs wrapped in quilts. He took one look at Sandor polishing helm in courtyard and boomed laughter. "Love girds the north stronger than iron," he told onlookers. "A lion's hound tamed by a wolf's grace. Songs will feast on that for ages." Meage Mormont arrived next, wounded but walking, her shield maidens dragging Fry prisoners in tow. She clasped Sandor's wrist in warrior salute, then kissed Sansa's cheeks. "Your union unites clans," she declared. "Who cares if tongues wag? Let them wag, they'll keep warm." Even the most skeptical bannermen warmed when they saw winter stores grow, heard travelers speak of safe roads under Stark banners, learned that Bolton raids dwindled since Clegane's spear shone in neck mists. Yet storms never rest long over calm seas. In late frostfall, ravens from Castle Black brought news most dire, creatures of ice moving south, whites walking in numbers not seen since the long night. Jon Snow, named Lord Commander, pleaded for northern aid, Dragoglass, men who still believed in the old tales. Sansa gathered council in Great Hall. Tallow candles sputtered, breath misted. Debates raged. Some lords scoffed wildling babble. Others, remembering tales by hearth, shivered. Finally Sansa rose. "My father taught me that the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword," she said. "Our realm faces sentence of death from beyond memory. We cannot hide behind walls while others freeze for our doubts. We march north." She looked to Sandor. He nodded once, silent, vow to stand where death walked. Preparations unfurled, smiths forging spearheads of black glass, Maester Alice brewing fire pots, crannogmen weaving nets laced with obsidian shards. Wildling envoys arrived, tall women with feathered cloaks, big-boned men bearing mammoth bone bows. Old grudges melted before shared dread. The night before departure, Sansa returned to Godwood. Snow heaped thick, muffling world. She found Sandor waiting by Hearttree, red leaves dusting his shoulders. Without words they exchanged tokens. Sansa fastened a small silver hound pendant to his belt. Sandor produced a blade she'd never seen, a slender dirk of pale steel, dire wolf etched into pommel. "Made from the molten swords we gathered," he explained. "For the Lady of Winter." She slid it into sheath at her waist, fingers trembling. Wind sighed through branches, scattering red leaf petals onto snow like flecks of living blood. She pressed her forehead to his, closed eyes. "We walk into night together." "Till dawn," he replied. Columns snaked out at dawn. Stark banners lined by bear, merman, stump-handed Dustin sigils. Wildlings padding in furs. Night's Watch rangers astride rangy northern steeds. Sansa rode morn ahead, Sandor beside on his black charger. Thick clouds swirl. D above, flakes drifted slow, heavy, harbingers of greater storms. But hearts burned bright as hearth fires on Yule. Beyond the last river, the land changed, trees gnarled, air brittle, silence vast. At times they glimpsed blue shining eyes between trunks, scouts of ice. Sansa felt chill even through layers, yet the dirk at her waist seemed to thrum warm with memory of Winterfell's forge. On fourth night they reached Shadow Gap, where Castle Black's signal fires winked like lonely stars atop ragged wall. Jon Snow greeted his sister with fierce embrace, hair rimed white. He stared at Sandor warily until Sansa spoke soft words, then Jon clasped hands with the Hound, acknowledging loyalty beyond lineage. War Council assembled in an abandoned wildling village south of the wall. Maps inked with trembling lines marked sightings of white hordes. Dragonglass caches hidden at Fist of the First Men glimmered hope. Sansa spoke of unity, of forging a shield from shattered houses. Men listened. Some Northmen, some free folk. Even a pale Lysini Sellsword whose accent dripped sea salt. Battle dawned under swirling lights. Aurora's curtain rippling green across black sky. Whites poured from tree line, eyes pale stars. Steel shattered bone. Dragonglass burst them like brittle crystal. Sandor cleaved path, spear a comet streak in gloom. Sansa fought at his flank, dirk sinking deep then flashing free, black crystal edge drinking cold fire. She felt no fear, only clarity crisp as iced river. Each swing meant life for someone behind. At height of frenzy a shadow loomed, white bare white larger than any living counterpart, ice-crusting fur. It barreled toward a cluster of Night's Watch youths. Sansa sprinted, shouting. The bear reared. She dodged swipe but stumbled, snow-swallowing boot. Claws descended. Then Sandor slammed into beast, shield shattering under blow yet diverting its fury. Dirks of dragonglass hammered together into makeshift spear. He drove point into bear's chest. Creature roared a death wail of shattering ice, collapsed in sparkling shards. Hours blurred. When dawn's gray seeped, the whites retreated like fog under sun. Corpses, friend and foe, lay strewn. Sansa's arms shook, breath ragged. She found Sandor kneeling by a fallen wildling boy, closing lids. His own torso bled from 3 rents, but he stood when she touched his shoulder. We live, he said, voice hoarse. For now, she answered. Yet living sometimes is enough. They burn the dead, flames licking sky, smoke painting sorrow into dawn hues. Jon spoke of next battles, manse of wildling scouts. Sansa listened, wept quietly for lost youths, then straightened. The war not done. Late afternoon she and Sandor walked ridge overlooking endless white. Clouds parted, pale sunlight gilded wind-sculpted drifts. She turned to him. When summer returns, what then? He shrugged. Find quiet place, maybe. Teach pups to guard hens. Forge new blades. She laid gloved palm against his chest. Share the quiet with me? His smile, rare, lopsided, bloomed. Aye, Wolf. She smiled too. Far below, armies mustered, banners whipped, voices rose in hardship him. But atop ridge in brittle light, Wolf and Hound shared heartbeat steady as northern oak, roots winding tangled through frost-hard ground into something unbreakable. And though winter howled from the wall and beyond, though night's shadow crept still upon the realms of men, their fire burned. In its glow people found reason to stand. In its embers songs of the north took new form, not of lone heroes or distant queens, but of pack, of battered, scarred souls who forged kinship stronger than any crown. A girl who learned to wield steel of mercy and justice, a man who learned gentleness without surrendering strength. Together they faced shadows and gave them pause. The tale would stretch long beyond that ridge. Of White Walkers shattered at Hardhome's second stand, of Robb Stark's triumph at Maidenpool and his wary peace with Dragonfire from the east, of Frey reckoning, of Manderly fleets riding summer seas. But those were chapters still inkwet, awaiting quills of time. For now, under the wheeling aurora, Sansa Stark leaned into Sandor Clegane's warmth, and both watched a sun-slivered world endure.